If you asked 100 golfers about their equipment, probably at least 99 of them first thought would gravitate towards their golf clubs. And the other 1%'s first thought would probably gravitate towards the type of golf ball that they used. And you look long and hard to find somebody whose first thought went to their golf shoes, probably in large part because shoes get lumped into the category of clothing, but they do play an integral role in and as your equipment. Well, today's guest is an expert. He's a creative genius, artistic phenomenon, and he is the current senior shoe designer for Puma and COBRA Golf. His name is Charley Hudak, and we sat down and had a fascinating conversation about everything that has to do with the creative process, shoe design, and just about everything else in between, as well as a number of different other things. And it was just eye-opening to me, all the different things that go into shoes. For example, the creative process and how they'd like to see the artistic fashion of a shoe. Well, then it's got to go to the functional side. And for somebody who's going to be walking a lot and walking, let's say, 6 miles a day as you play a round of 18 holes, is it going to be comfortable for that and functional at the same time? What type of material is going to be involved? Is it going to be leather uppers? Is it going to be mesh? The type of foam that they use, the density of the foam. All those different things go into the design and creative process of what we put on our feet each and every time that we go out to the golf course. So just, like I said, a very, very cool and fascinating show. Charley's a great guy that's going to really come across in here, as well as his creative genius. And I think you're really, really going to enjoy what he has to say. So as always, give a big, big, warm Golf 360 welcome to my guest today, senior shoe designer for Puma COBRA Golf, Mr. Charley Hudak. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. Hey, everybody. I want to give a big shout out to a new sponsor of the Golf 360 podcast, and that's Affinity Wealth Management Group. We all work exceptionally hard for our money, and none of us can afford to let that fall into the dark abyss of the big box financial service firms and their jack of all trades and master of none mantra, which basically means you become a number within a cookie cutter model that's also often accompanied by massive fees. Your future deserves more than average returns and little attention. At Affinity Wealth Management, they ensure that your financial goals receive highly individualized, tailored attention from experts, not just advisors, who are in the industry to be great and not average. As a client of Affinity Wealth, you receive a customized solution to your customized life, keeping in mind your family's financial situation, values, and risk tolerance. Call Affinity Wealth today for a no-cost consultation with one of their experts at 724-754-8200. Again, that's 724-754-8200. Or you can also check them out on the web at www.affinitywealthmg.com. That's AFFINITYWEALTHMG.com. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. All right, we're live at the Hudak residence with Mr. Charley Hudak. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, I got to ask you before we get, so here's a hat. Every guest gets a hat. You can pick what color you want.
Nice.
So you're a design guy. Give me your professional opinion of the logo. And maybe I'll give you a little backstory.
Yeah, give me a backstory.
So the top part of it, the golf ball part, that's a GP, and it's Golf Paradigm. So that's my golf school. And so I had always had theories that, look, it's not, if you're going to teach golf, it's not just golf instruction. It's not just the mechanics of the swing, that there's so many aspects that are involved in something. And you can use it in any discipline or any industry. I had always had that opinion. And so I had studied the body well in advance of biomechanics, like today being the big thing. Got very deep into club fitting and neurophysiology, psychological aspect on intellectual styles and how people learn, creative, analytical, audio, visual, all that stuff. Because how you're going to teach somebody you have to be able to relate it in the language that they can comprehend, right? And then the last one was the integration. So which of those recipes do you need or which of those ingredients in the recipe does someone need at any given particular time in order to advance, like we were talking earlier, 1 + 1 = 4 to get faster and rapid advancement. So, and I had a somewhat of a background in martial arts. So the yin and the yang was the balance. So
that's what I was going to...
Right. So the overall circle of the logo is golf in general. And then the G and the P are the two equal parts of, you have to practice and train at certain things, but you also have to be able to utilize them and play, because so many people, especially in this area, they retire, I'm going to play golf every day, and they do, and they get worse, and they can't figure it out. So that was the yin and yang, and then the 5 elements were the swing mechanics, club fitting, mental side, training and fitness, and then the integration. So that was the background behind the top portion of the golf school, and then I took that and said, okay, the podcast is going to be Golf 360. I don't want to pigeonhole myself with just either instructors, teachers, coaches, that thing. So I'm like, okay, 360. So anything that's associated with golf. So I've had on Fortune 50 CEOs, Marine colonels, distillery owners. They all have a connection to golf in some way, shape, or form. But that's where the 360 comes from.
No, I mean, it's nice. I mean, immediately I was thinking about the yin and yang when I first saw it. And did you design it, or did...
I had the idea. I drew it on a piece of paper, and I used to teach the guy who is the art director for Playboy.
Oh, wow.
For I don't know how long. I think he worked at Playboy for 40 years.
Wow.
I mean,
wow.
Our lessons were more him telling me stories,
yeah,
things that happened in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I called him up one day, and I said, Tom, I'm going to email you. I said, I have this idea for a logo. I'm going to email it to you. Can you do something for me? The next day, he sent something very similar back. It was just the pieces were a little thicker, and I said, can you just change this? And he said, yeah. I didn't know anything about Publisher or any design tools, so he goes, look, it literally took me 5 minutes to put that together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's nice. I mean, it makes sense to me, and I like your 5 stages, like the 5 stages of complete holistic approach to golf, because I think I mean, with any sport, I mean, it's not just one facet that that you need to understand and grasp, and I think just biomechanics in general, I think it's like muscle memory. If you start to master them, it's like that. What is it? 10,000 hours or 20,000
to become an expert.
Yeah, to become an expert. I mean, it's just training your body on how to do things, and what we were talking about earlier about just ways to enhance your performance. I mean, yeah. I mean, but I would just say overall. I mean, this obviously I like kind of that tonal approach. I like this one.
It's yours.
Yeah,
that's what you get.
Sick.
Take it.
I appreciate it. They're nice.
Thanks for coming on. It's going to be fun.
No, I appreciate you for having me.
Before we came on, we were talking about ice baths, and you're a Wim Hof fan, and we found out I am too. And what was the catalyst for you to get into that?
I mean, honestly, I think my brother Chris introduced me to it originally, but I was, always interested in just, getting to optimal health. Like, I think initially, like, and I was I was living in New York City, and I was hanging out with people that were in a similar vein. Especially, one of my friends was a bartender, but at the same time, he was very much into just biohacking and getting like peak performance. And he was like 50, and he was just shredded, and very knowledgeable about like not only diet, exercise, sleep, breathing, like all of it, yoga. He was very much, I think he replaced his addictions with from alcohol and drugs.
Well, you rechannel that focus and addiction, put it into something else.
And he's now, I think he's, to give him a plug, his name was George, and he was a bartender at one of the local places I used to go to, but he was going to read a book called From Free-Based to Plant-Based. And that was like his book idea. And that was going to be the title, and we kind of ribbed him. I was like, that's a long title. We might want to shorten that up. But yeah, I just been interested in as I get older, just trying to find ways to improve my condition and improve just like my daily experiences, I think. And just trying new things. Like I think like testing boundaries and like pushing yourself to limits that at one time when I first started doing the hydrotherapy, the showers were like, I was happy to get a minute, the cold showers. And I think the temperature was like at 51 degrees.
When you did the showers, did you go in first thing in the morning with the shower as cold as it could be?
I did it twice. So I did it once in the morning, and then as
Shocks
cold.
the shit out of your system, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It definitely wakes you up.
I was listening to like some hardcore, like hardcore rap, or just like heavy, something to psych me up.
Some Pantera.
Yeah, like Quiet Riot, something like that. But yeah, so I just, and it was like an accomplishment too, like right out of the day, like to accomplish something like that, just get you off on a good start. I think for me, that was, it was the sense of accomplishment. It made you feel good, and you starting from there is a good place to start the day. Like I was in there for a minute. All right, next day, 2 minutes. Month later, 5 minutes. And I think I did cold water showers for a year before I started doing submersing. And then that was like a whole nother level. Like I said earlier, it was trying to stay in there for 30 seconds was a complete different experience than the showers.
It like pricks your skin, is how I try to tell some people. Like someone just needling you all over your body simultaneous when you're in that cold water.
Yeah,
in the beginning.
It was so, like, at one point I think I got to, like, I forget my record. It might have been over. I forget. But at one point, like, my body like seized. Then I froze, and my buddy had to help me get out of the ice bath. But he was in there for, he could get into like the belly breathing and the Buddha breathing or whatever, and be in there for like 8 minutes. And another friend of his was able to take phone calls and do like
just talk without shivering.
Yeah. So I was like, holy, and I think it's like mind control too. Like you said, the psychology part behind like, sitting with that discomfort, I think is pretty powerful as well. And I think, obviously Wim Hof has some things in his past. Yeah. Like his past is like, if you know about his story, he wasn't like gifted right out of the gates.
His wife died and he was in depression.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So he's been through some stuff, and he had to train his mind. And all these guys like Jocko, and I think that's where it started. I think my brother Chris introduced me to like this kind of what was it, David Goggins and Jocko and some of these like hardcore things, and Rogan, and like it just was interesting, and like the whole biohacking thing too. Like I think something resonated with me early on when I went to a doctor about my lower back when I was young, and they said like when the engine light comes on in a car, you immediately go to a mechanic. But when your body sends you messages, you're just like, oh, it'll go away, it'll go away. And he's like, if we spent as much time like for our objects, like our cars and like our computers, fixing them as we, like we use that same energy on our bodies, he's like you would tap into like a pretty amazing experience. So, so that's why I got into it. But I would say I'm like just recently getting back into it, and I missed it. And I think it's a sense of accomplishment more than anything, and seeing like if like it feels good to be able to sit in there for 5 minutes.
Have you done the cycle of cold bath, warm,
shower,
cold bath?
Handful of times, and at different places, like whether it was like natural springs with a cold bath nearby.
So it was set like the real deal where it was set up to do that.
Yeah, like you mean it at like when it. You mean exterior?
Okay. Okay, so Tony Robbins has that. Is it Namalé, that place in where is
Sun
it?
Valley?
No, the one he has in the Pacific, where he owns like the island.
Oh.
So there was a reporter, a young guy from New York Times or one of those magazines, that Tony's like, yeah, come on, you want to do a story? And this kid's like 26, right? He's just one of his first jobs. So Tony takes him through his exercise routine where he's like full out for 15 seconds, and he does that. But then he sticks him in the sauna. I don't know how long he was in there, but then, I mean, you take 2 steps outside the sauna and they got a plunge pool, like an 8 or 9 foot plunge pool. I don't know what it was, 39 degrees or 40 degrees. So as a kid, jump out of the sauna into the plunge pool. Like you take 2 steps and you're in.
That's crazy.
So it's a setup like that. But I did it once. My back was really locked up, and that was when I was doing the ice baths. And I said, okay, I'm going to do the three set. So I did 10 minutes in the bath, 2 minutes in a hot shower, and I did it 3 times. And the second round, halfway through, it was getting mentally difficult. I guess the chemical change in your body or whatever it does. But by the 3rd time I went into the shower, it was like releasing a drain that was clogged. Like all that blood got pumped and flushed out, and it was at least 50% better.
Yeah.
So without any chiropractic, without any soft tissue work, just cold and ice baths and heat.
Yeah, I mean, I think the coolest place I did like hydrotherapy probably was in Sun Valley. I was there for a wedding, and someone told us about the hot springs, but it was cold. I mean, it was freezing. The runoff water from the snow melt was freezing cold. But there was a place where you could sit where it was warm because there was thermal
steam. Yeah.
And so I was the only one of the group there that actually went into the stream that was freezing, and it was freezing cold. And there was ice nearby, but like that was like the closest I've come to what you're talking about, like the Tony Robbins. But I've, like at certain spas, I've done like the cold dip, the sauna, the steam, the circuit or whatever. But I would say like for the one thing that one of the guys that actually went on one of the Wim Hof seminars that I was friends with out in San Diego, he was a big proponent of letting your body warm you back up. And in California, that's cool, but like in other places, like it's good to get into either a hot tub or a sauna or a steam or something after that. Because I mean, yesterday I did one, and I was cold. I was walking on the beach, and I was cold for the rest of the night until I got a hot shower.
Inner chill.
Yeah, I was freezing. So, but I mean, ultimately, it's just like I like exploring like new things and trying new things, like. Even after like I had wrist surgery and reconstructive hand surgery, and I think it's helped with that as well. I mean, like you said, it unclogs, like it gets your blood going. I mean, some of the science behind it is, I mean, reduction of inflammation. All those things are that they're finding. I mean, it can't hurt the way like
right. It's not hurting.
Yeah, so like
it's like I used to listen to Peter Attia quite a bit because he's got that longevity clinic. I don't know if he's in San Diego or he's in L.A. He's another one's in New York. But it's like someone asked him about, is it okay to drink 1 glass of wine a night because it's supposed to be good for you and this and that? And he finally kind of chuckled because he likes wine, I think. And he says, I obviously read a lot of literature and studies for decades. He says, and there's a lot of discrepancy on if does 1 glass a week help? Is it 2 glasses or what? He said, but I do know this for a fact, that nobody has really had any problem from not ever drinking alcohol. So I can't tell you to go ahead and drink it, but I can tell you that if you don't drink it, your chances of being healthy are probably going to be higher.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree.
Someone trying to rationalize, hey, had half a bottle of wine at dinner last night. Can I have another glass tonight?
Yeah, I would say like that's what, like when I would start getting into a groove, like both like mental, emotional, physical, kind of like a nice cadence. Mm-hmm. Usually alcohol would probably send me on a, like it would knock me off, throws me off. Yeah. So like even a handful of drinks, during a wedding or something like that, like it just would knock me out for like a couple of days because I would just feel terrible and then I wouldn't want to do it. And the next day I'm like lacking motivation. And then the following day I'm like, oh, I'll get back on the cycle again. So yeah, I mean, some people are fine though. Like I know plenty of people that have, a couple pops here and there and they wake up the next day, no problem. So
I can't even. I went through a cleanse. I had shingles coming up on 2 years, and so they determined, okay, this is an autoimmune problem you got. Mm-hmm. Mine was through digestion. I didn't have any parasites or anything like that, but I have a major imbalance in the flora in my gut. Mm-hmm. They're like, you're eating healthy, but you're eating too much. Mm-hmm. Like I'd eat a whole steak, 12-ounce steak, and even sweet potatoes and salad, but you'd eat almost a whole sweet potato, and then you eat a big bowl of salad, and then once, maybe twice a week, I'd have dessert. And I'm like, how come what's going on? I don't eat bad. I couldn't lose weight. And they're like, they did all they must have, I think I had 100 pages back of blood tests, urine samples, stool, the whole thing. Yeah. And anyway, last year and a half, I've been going through this clean eating. And we started a bourbon club in our neighborhood. And last night when you're bourbon club, you're tasting like this much, right? Like a half an inch because you're just tasting. And I think I had 3 of those and one regular normal drink. And this morning I'm feeling it. Yeah. Like I would if I was 20 and had a case of beer.
Yeah, yeah.
For sure. So, and as you age, your body can't, your chemical structure doesn't detox like it used to.
For sure. I think that is the one thing. Like I never really had like crazy hangovers when I was young. Mm-hmm. And now it's debilitating at times, if I indulge too much. But I would say, like even like overseas, like I kind of put when I travel for work, overseas. If you indulge a little bit, you're dealing with jet lag. You're dealing with a new climate. Right. There's so like your 360 philosophy. It's the same thing. Like when I go overseas, it's like it's not just physical. It's mental. There's so many components to it. The emotions of like being away, being in a new land, different hours. So like one drink over there while you're jet lagged is like 4 drinks over here. So, I don't know. I guess ultimately like I remember when I was like 25 or 26, I was like, I hope by the time I'm 35, I won't be drinking anymore.
It makes you because you just feel like shit.
Yeah.
I used to be able to eat. My brother and I would watch golf on the weekend, and we go to Publix and get a Oreo cake, marble cake with Oreo ice cream. We'd cut it in half, and we'd sit there and eat it with split a gallon of milk. And we'd feel fine. Right. And my whole life growing up, like I'd eat, like baked goods was my vice. Uh-huh. I drank, of course, with buddies, but I didn't care for alcohol, to taste alcohol. Yeah. Didn't like cigarettes, that sort of thing. Didn't get into drugs, but baked goods, I'll eat a whole bag of Oreos in a heartbeat. And people are like, that doesn't bother you? I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Never got an insulin rush. Yeah. Any of that. But as soon as I went through a cleanse about 10 years ago, a friend of mine said, he's a Czech practitioner. He goes, you got to clean up the diet. And I did it. Ever since then, I'm like, you took away my superpower. If I have now
the superpower of
being able to eat that stuff and not feeling any effect, at least feeling the effect, right? The damage is being done. But if I have, I don't know, 5 or 6 Oreos, I'm feeling it within 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm non-dairy now, and I have been ever since. There was a book I read called The Anti-Cancer Diet by Dr. Servan Schreiber. And my brother was going through cancer going through his treatment at the time with cancer, and I just pretty much adopted his diet just to just join forces. And I haven't been a dairy guy since. Almond milk, but is a good substitute. But pizza, I miss for sure. But
have you tried I got an awesome recipe for cauliflower pizza.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Oh, it is. You at least get the psychological, because we all associate we're about the same age, growing up in the 70s and 80s and 90s with pizza. You're always around. It's either a birthday party or hanging out with your buddies and sports or whatever it is. It's always fun. So there's that psychological aspect of it. But this checks that box big time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had Dr. Michael Hollis on. He's a hormonal specialist out in California.
Oh, wow.
I'll get you connected to him too. He only does by referral. He doesn't have any website, doesn't have any social media. He's the one that got me back on track.
I like that style.
And he works with evidently a lot of sports, like professional, like their contracts coming up, and then they really need to perform well. And he's like, okay, here, I mean, this drink is all my vitamin drink and everything. So I take 2 scoops a day and put it in 50 ounces of water. And
oh, nice.
So I'm not sitting there popping a dozen or more vitamins a day.
Like growing up in Pittsburgh, that looked like a bitter.
The stuff at the bottom. What is it? What's this? The fiber.
Yeah.
So and I'll send you his podcast. Cool. That was a pretty good one.
Yeah,
he talked about like the drop in testosterone over the generations. He's like, I said, is it the food? Because we did talk about nutritional stuff and food being depleted over farming.
Yeah,
and he goes, but how are you going to feed 7 billion people on the planet?
Right.
But he said that testosterone is lifestyle. People are sitting at desks. They're no longer out working all day on a farm. They're not pulling a hoe. They're not digging. They're not physically active.
Right.
And
like we're regressing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of that stuff. He said lifestyle change. He's on me all the time. He was like, you got to start doing more cardio.
Yeah.
You got to get your heart pumping.
For sure. I mean, I'm at a desk in a computer nonstop. I need to get those blue light glasses. I have a stand up desk and I've been trying to do and like it's hard because you can move it up and down, obviously, and so you kind of get in the habit of sitting, but standing, I think, and for me too, like just drawing and sketching and stuff like that, like it's a lot easier while you're sitting.
I had the GOTA guys on yesterday, and we were talking about that before we came on. Their theories on inside ankle bone high and the angles of everything, but they're big onto I hope I say it right, Sousa chairs, like a meditation chair. So where you're sitting.
I think my sister has one. So it's like you can be out like that, like you're split.
Yeah, so you're basically kneeling, and then your feet are behind you, and then like we talked about the ankle and the heel are away from the center line, the toes are in.
Yeah,
sitting like we were meant to sit, and or you can even pull one knee up while one's behind you, and you can change position. Meditation chairs, I guess, is the same thing. So I'm kind of checking that out because I'm at a desk like you most of the day,
right?
And I've had my challenges with back stuff. So if I can do anything to keep the hip flexors opened up and not tightened up, hamstrings not from locking up.
Yeah, I watched a video about specifically about like the evolution of the body and as it relates to the feet and footwear and stuff like that. And obviously there's a lot of different trends that have the book Born to Run and barefoot running and like what's best, and obviously you have a lot of exposure to that as well. But the interesting piece that like I think I was drawn to is that like we were like predatory animals. Like we hunted by I guess it was like not a war of attrition, but we were able to go long distances.
Yeah, we have endurance where animal prey have sprint ability.
And we sweat and they usually release their heat through their mouth,
panting. Yeah.
Right, as opposed to us being able to sweat and release our heat throughout our body. But either which way, it was interesting to me because I think I was told a story one time that like we were like if we were chasing a deer, we could chase it over time, eventually exhaust them. And like we could eventually just close their nose and
right. They're kind of laying there, and it just doesn't take much effort.
So I mean, I think like realistically, we probably should be on our feet way more than we are present day. I don't know the science necessarily behind it, so this is just kind of anecdotal. But I would think that I mean, we're at this point through evolution, we're upright, and so the problem's probably are more associated to sitting in bad posture than anything. Because when you're standing, I mean, the posture kind of figures itself out. But yeah, I mean, it's a I mean, even just working in footwear, like having had the opportunity to work with different people and athletes and and doctors and surgeons and, even taking a biomedical engineering course in college. Like it's endless, right? I mean, the amount
especially because they're finding new things all the time.
Yeah. I mean, like, I forget it's 26 bones, right? I mean, I think
in the foot.
There's like, just in your arch alone, there's like 4 layers of fascia. Like all of and I worked with one doctor. He told me I had him come and speak to a class at the University of Cincinnati, and he said, it's a footwear class. He's like, most footwear cause problems for my field. He's like, I don't come across many shoes that solve problems. So I was like, I was like, don't say that to the class, but I get it, because you have, I mean, just the way the shoes are built. They're built on a static foot form. It's a last, and you go from there, and it's not an active, it's not an active moving part. So,
what do you think of those 5-finger shoes that were pretty big for training for a long time?
I mean, full disclosure, I mean, I wore those because I had back issues, and I used to work at a retail store and cement floors, and I started wearing those Vibram 5 fingers. I tried everything. I tried every kind of footwear under the sun to help with my back, and I don't know if. I don't really know the science necessarily, like, well enough to attribute anything. It could have been any number of things, but it may have just corrected itself. But those 5 fingers, I started wearing those, and I noticed that it's like kind of like, I believe in, if you strengthen your feet, it will help. Like, I think, like, when I come across yogis that have like the dexterity and the movement of their foot and the strength in their foot, and like they're able to spread their 5 toes. I think that's how we should be.
Yeah. If you ever read, what's the book? Weston Price's Physical Nutrition, Physical Degeneration. All right. He was a dentist in the 1920s.
Wow.
And he had the theory that diet was a leading contributor to cavities. So as opposed to, let's say, brushing your teeth every day, multiple times. So what he did a self-funded study where he went around the world to indigenous cultures. Like he went to the Zulus in Africa. He went to the Swiss Alps, Welsh, the Pima Indians, and then like the Maoris in the Pacific. And what he found was like cavities were like less than 0.5%.
Wow.
Like dental structure was absolutely perfect without orthodontics.
Wow.
Cancer was almost not found. Heart disease was almost not found. So he's like, all these people are eating their local food, and they're eating off the land, and they're not having really any problems. But one thing he also noted in the book was the modern shoe, as shoes pinch forward at the toes. And he had pictures of people who would wear shoes like that where their toes were all mangled up. And then he had the indigenous cultures where their toes, as you said, were all spread. And it was almost like the line of the inside portion of the heel went to the second toe, and then the big toe turned inwards so, as they spread out.
Right.
So, right, like you said, if it's spread out and it's supportive, then your knees, your hips, your lumbar spine, everything above it's going to not have to compensate.
Well, you referenced before we started, like the people that you were working with your back, and they reference babies crawling,
right?
And I mean, although it's outside of my own industry, I mean, we're not born with shoes on.
No.
So and I actually got to work with a company that worked with Kenyan runners, and the majority of the runners at these training facilities were in bare feet up until they're like age 16, before they start getting the big contracts with the different footwear companies. So, I mean, realistically, I think that with the advent of concrete and I mean, not necessarily the advent, but like we're being exposed to different terrain now. So like running on asphalt, you need some protection,
right?
So it's a little bit, but I've seen some of those guys that are barefoot runners that are running around bare feet, like even I think I saw a handful of them wearing 5 fingers at the New York City Marathon. Wow. So it's like, I think you can do it, on pavement. You just have to, change your running style. There's a lot of people are about the midfoot striking and like preventing your heel from crashing onto the ground to protect from injury. But yeah, I mean, it's the footwear industry is a big business, and I mean, you're seeing like a lot of the maximum cushioning brands like Hoka,
the Hokas,
and stuff. So for the ultra marathoners, and you want that cushion, and it's also like making it, it's for longevity as well. Like when you're older, your body starts to break down, so like adding more cushion makes sense. And I mean, it's just fascinating because it evolves. Like like anything, you learn more. You read different things that kind of push you into a different kind of mindset. Like, what if we tried something similar to this? Like you were just saying, like just the positioning of your toes, like where where that center line kind of is, and like couldn't you develop a shoe that like? Did you remember have you ever seen the tabby shoes that? Like you said, you did martial arts, like the toe, it's like the ninja shoes,
right?
And is that better, and like will that improve performance? And I think it's like interesting when you start working with people that have like an open mind to different kind of, I guess, philosophies or theories behind their builds, because there are there's plenty of shoes that have that tabby style as well. The 5 fingers, obviously. I think I was at Outdoor Retailer in Salt Lake City when they released Vibram released that 5 fingers, and it was the talk of the town. Like everybody,
immediately,
like everybody was like, "How did they do that? That's amazing, super cool." Like everybody was like, obviously they're not like the most flattering. They probably people going to give you some weird looks when you wear them, but. I mean, they're pushing the envelope, and they have like these theories of like that is going to help. And I think actually I was like an early adopter on that and on the 5 fingers. And I think on the box, there was like instructions. There was like caution. They're like, do not go full board.
Yeah,
Start off walking.
Walk like 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I think it was wear them around the house.
Yeah.
After a couple weeks or a week, whatever, walk for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't go out, walk 5 miles or run 5 miles in the first week.
Yeah, it's like the baby steps thing. I mean, like I wish I think if it wasn't for being out in the West Coast when I was trying to learn how to surf, I still call it drowning, but the water was cold, so that was like my first introduction into like the cold water. So it was a gradual introduction. I was wearing a wetsuit and whatnot, but even during the summer, the water was if you're wearing board shorts and like like a jacket or whatever, or a rash guard, it still was chilly.
Especially like we said, once it starts moving across your body.
Yeah. So I think that was like my early introduction. So it like got me prepared for the cold water. But I mean, now I think I guess like little by little you get more used to it, and it becomes less like, I guess,
torturous.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's always torture, I think, but sadistic. But like, it makes you feel good. Like it to me, like even if you go surfing and you don't catch a wave, like it still makes you feel good. What'd you do today? Went for a surf, went for a run. Those things break up your day. Those things like make you feel good. I mean, it can't hurt. There's things that you can do, obviously, that will probably not beneficial to you, but they're markers, So anyway, don't want to ramble too much about that, but yeah, I think we have similar interest in that, and in like just general like well-being. I think is like is a good trend that's taking place. Like we're becoming way more aware, and plus we have the access to information now.
Yeah, and I'm a big documentary guy.
Yeah,
especially with TV, the way that it's gotten today. I mean, it's either the news or these shows are just so off the wall. I'm like, yeah, I'm not into that shit. But one of them I watched was Abstract on Netflix.
Oh, nice.
And it was all, I think the guy from the New Yorker, the cartoonist, was in there, and they had a photographer in there that photographed more world leaders than anybody in history. But one I was really fascinated by was the one on Tinker Hatfield in shoe design. And I didn't know that you were in shoe design. I was talking to your brother about it, and he's like, "Oh, that's my brother does that." You've obviously seen that.
Yeah. I mean, and he's probably the biggest. I mean, he's the most recognizable name in the industry, bar none. I would say. I mean, I guess some folks could probably argue that, but I mean, he was always. I mean, I remember hearing about Tinker at a pretty young age, and I remember also I remember like he came from like a architecture background, and he just had, I think, like, just in generally speaking, he has like a very kind of his approach is, where he gains his inspiration from and how he views the world is just pretty unique. And I mean, obviously he's, someone that like I studied and paid attention to and watched tons of interviews and abstract as well, and so, yeah, he's the top echelon. I think
he's the GOAT.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would say for sure. I mean, I think, like, I forget, one of the guys that was a mentor of mine from Nike, Jordan Brand, and whatnot, said like there's like a handful of names at Nike that are spoke with the reverence. One was like obviously Phil Knight, Bill Bowerman, and like Mark Parker, and then and Tinker's in that that Hall of Fame. So and for a designer, like like everyone, I would say all of my colleagues, all the people I've worked with, everyone knows who Tinker.
Did you read Shoe Dog?
Yeah. Amazing.
I read that in like 2 days.
Yeah.
I couldn't put it down.
Yeah, amazing. And like it brings more, it made it more kind of like, I don't know, some people had different reactions to it, but I having experienced a lot of that lifestyle and like that culture and whatnot, like it really resonated with me, and it actually like was super inspirational. And it also gave me like a more like real life, it made Nike more realistic to me. You think of it like this multi-billion-dollar, juggernaut, and
I don't think many people realize, and that was like, I've had some pretty well-known people on the podcast, and one of the things wasn't, if there's any knock on the show, it's that, okay, well, I don't have time to listen to a multi-hour show. And my response is, well, one, the people I get on are exceptionally good at what they do. And to say that we've got to do this in an hour or less, there's no way. It's not fair.
Yeah.
You can't even scratch the surface.
Yeah, right.
And then, because if you get off on a tangent, if you start talking about something, I'm not going to interrupt you and say, oh, we only got a couple more minutes for this section. We got to move to the next one. And the other was, you can't ask someone at that level to tell their story and the background, to give some perspective on what they do in a short period of time. Yeah,
like if you had, I mean, obviously, like if you had Tinker on here, like your viewership and your membership probably would increase substantially, because it's a culture that is like, I mean, it's hard to even explain to laymen, even those that I've met along the way that consider themselves quote unquote sneakerheads. Like, I'm not sure they quite, I mean, maybe they do, but maybe they don't. But it's a phenomenon, and I got introduced to it from sports. Like my tool was shoes. Like the only thing I really needed to buy was shoes. I could cut off pants, make them shorts, jorts or whatever. I could wear any t-shirt, but like the shoes on a basketball court, or the shoe, like I needed special cleats. Obviously I didn't have like the latest greatest, but you needed to have the footwear to perform. Pretty much. I mean, you could probably get away with wearing some off category shoe, but basketball shoes were the thing that got me interested. And I was at that age, that impressionable age when it all hit fire.
When it took off.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's hard to explain to people that time and period and that place.
Well, you had
Jordan.
Yeah, the Jordans, when he took over the design of the Jordan shoe.
Yeah.
And it was the Jordan, the third installment. You had Reebok with the cross trainer.
Oh yeah,
I mean, that was all like at that period of time. So the shoe industry or sports shoe industry was exploded.
Yeah, well, I always like I do some like seminars and go to high schools and go to colleges and have taught some classes at university levels. And talking about that time period, I said it was like the perfect storm of sports marketing. So you had like all of a sudden you had ESPN being 24 hours. So you had sports 24 hours. You're exposed to that.
First time.
Yeah. And then you had the Olympics on American soil. So in 1984 in LA. So it was like, boom. And some of the athletes that were performing in that Olympics were very, very much part of the marketing as well. And then you had these footwear companies that were, and Jordan. Like Jordan was that piece that was like, it's game over. Like, like what happened there? It was, like I said, I mean, it was out of, I remember living in Pittsburgh. We didn't have an NBA team, still don't, but
the Pittsburgh Pisces.
Yeah, but I remember that Jordan and the Bulls came to town for a preseason game with the Utah Jazz. So it was Karl Malone and John Stockton versus Jordan, and there was a line around the Civic Arena. I mean, this is it might have been 86, 84, 85, something like that. But it was like Beatlemania almost. I mean, you had people waiting and then after the game, there was this huge, massive congregation of people, and I was like, "What is going on over there?" And my dad was like, "We're not messing with that. Get in the car." And it was Jordan coming out of the locker room, to get on the bus. But yeah, I mean, it was the perfect storm of like all of that taking place, like sports marketing, the Olympics, and Jordan. And it was just like, and those shoes. I mean, and the three I have like that was. I think I wrote Tinker actually a letter when I was like first going back to school for industrial design. I think I wrote him a letter just telling him that the three kind of was super sentimental to me because that like my older brother Chris, who I referenced earlier about introducing me to the biohackers or the badasses, he got a pair of Jordan 3s for his confirmation. And like I remember, like he had for some weird reason, we were at this like congregation of like it was like the post confirmation. It was like all these.
Was that the 3/4 height? It wasn't the height.
Yeah, it was like and so, but it was. I mean, it was the
and
three.
He was in that. I think that was the first year he was in dunk contest too, wasn't it? No, he was in earlier when he had the black.
Yeah,
white,
he
black.
was. Yeah, I think he was.
He had like a hiatus, and then he came back when we had the.
Yeah,
threes.
he broke his. I think he broke his foot.
Broke his foot.
Yeah, and so the whole thing was like the Jordan 1, I mean, obviously that was the one that was banned by the NBA. The Jordan 2 was, I love the Jordan 2. And then the Jordan 3 was, like I said, when my brother opened that box from his confirmation sponsor, I was like, that was like, that's when I was like, that's when it turned to the next level.
That kind of what got you into, or at least lit the spark.
You lit the spark, but I had no idea. Like, I just thought they showed up. Like I didn't know that there was people that designed shoes at that time. Like I didn't know who.
There's no comprehension.
It was just like we went to Foot Locker and you like, whoa, those are cool. Like, and I didn't think that people actually built them. I guess I was just more concerned about like Jordan's, crossover or his rock step or whatever. I was more concerned about like watching players, like, you name it. I mean, there was tons of people like Steve Smith. I mean, there was Kenny Anderson. Like I remember watching Kenny Anderson, Bobby Hurley. Bobby Hurley was like, like gave me hope. And same with Kenny Anderson, like two skinny kids and not necessarily like 6'4". So I was like, all right. And I would obsess over that. So like the shoes was just piece of it. And I, quite frankly, like I don't think my dad was keen on spending $100 for a pair of shoes.
Not back then. That was a lot of money.
Yeah. So like, it was like, and I started doing weird stuff like right away with shoes. Like I started cutting off pieces. I started, like trying to make them lighter, trying to make them cooler. Like I would carve away pieces and I would also start drawing on them. I would start stenciling on them. I would do, and my friends would ask me to do it to their shoes. So like they'd be like, "Can you put my girlfriend's name on the back heel?" And I was like, "Oh." He's like, "But don't be too obvious with it because I don't want to get roasted by people." But yeah, it was just and I remember like sometimes like I remember in 7th grade I was like putting duct tape on the bottom of my shoes. So like I would it wouldn't look like I wore them, and then I would sell them to a friend, and then I think my friend's parents would call my parents and be like, "Your son's selling his shoes to our kids. Can you please have him stop?" But yeah, it was just the introduction was sports for me, 100%. Like it was, and I think that's similar for a lot of people. You want to be, if you can't be in it, you want to be around it type of deal. But yeah, I mean, I would say like I thought they just showed up, and so I went through college trying to figure it out, and then like ultimately I had a couple friends that I went to college with that ended up working at Nike in marketing or in sales or something like that, and one in particular was just like, come out to Nike, check us out, and that was like when I think I was like 25 or 26 at the time, and I think that's when I was just like, oh my gosh, like there's a whole army of people to build these shoes, to make these shoes, to sell these shoes, to market it, design these shoes, all this stuff. And that's when I was like, how do I get to be a part of this? And so that's when that's when it started. And then they were like, you need to go back to school. You need to.
So do you have an undergrad degree in art and design?
I have an undergrad degree. I have a degree from Miami of Ohio in humanities, like so bachelor of arts, and then I went back to school for industrial design at the University of Cincinnati, DAP, which is like acronym for design,
architecture,
art and planning.
Yeah,
right. And so that's when like things start. Originally I went to SCAD right down the road, and the first year I was there, like everything was fine, but it wasn't as intense as I wanted to be. I'm sure it probably would have gotten more intense as like you start getting away from the foundations.
Yeah, it's huge now.
But yeah, I mean everybody, like when I go around, it's a great program for sure, 100%. But when I was going around to look, I was trying to find an internship during the summer. And when I was going around to the different companies, like I was just knocking on doors, like old school, like, and they would be like, "Oh, you should talk to so-and-so." And pretty much everyone that they were having me talk to was from the University of Cincinnati. Somehow there was like some sort of University of Cincinnati. And I was like, do I really have to go back to Ohio for another 5 years? But I reached out to a couple of people at the University of Cincinnati. Dale Murray was one of the professors there, and I took him out. I took him out to lunch, and I was like, you got to let me in. And he's like, your grades aren't in undergrad aren't good enough. And I was like, man, I'll do whatever it takes, And so he was one of those guys that was a mentor of mine, and he essentially like convinced the university to allow me in, and that set me off on the trajectory, and it just, then I started doing internships at different places and really focusing on footwear, and now like a couple 10 years down the road that here I am. But
where did you when you graduated from there, you went right into the shoe design industry?
Yeah, so I would say I started doing internships in 2007, 2006, 2007. First one was in Portland, Oregon, and so I was out in Portland, Oregon, which is like a hotbed, and for footwear. And yeah, I started getting exposed to people, at Adidas, got exposed to people at Nike, got exposed to people at Keen, obviously. That's where my internship was, and I mean the whole city is it's
like the Silicon Valley of shoes.
Right. Yeah. So I mean it was a great opportunity right out of the gates, and then I got the opportunity to work at K-Swiss, and then Under Armour, and then Reebok, and then my senior thesis was originally like I was gonna, like we were supposed to, my degree is in industrial design, so we were ultimately supposed to build a product that we would design, build, and then ultimately like kind of market and then present at the final critique, and I decided to do like a more of an experiential and like kind of a social design course, and I basically was using footwear design to be part of a STEM program, at a local high school. And so that was my senior thesis. It was called TREAD, like teaching responsibility and empowerment to aspiring designers. So I was using footwear design at a local inner city high school, and using that to teach them about science, technology, engineering, art, and math.
Get him in, like you saw your brother's shoes, light that fire for some of these kids who normally wouldn't be introduced to it.
Yeah, exactly. And then in like, it was like the response was unreal. Like it was, I mean, I didn't expect it to turn into what it did, but I mean, I had people from the Wall Street Journal calling. I had, we had an article in Inc. magazine. They did a small little short little blurb about it in Slam magazine. PFSK, like website, like a creative website that advertising and whatnot, did a story about it. I'm spacing about there was another magazine that did a story on it as well. I'm spacing on the name, but it just was, I mean, the amount of exposure that it had was also, it was amazing. But people were like championing it and really wanting it to move forward, and like, hey, like I had opportunities to take it to other schools, and like had people reaching out. And then University of Cincinnati was like, stay here, get your master's, keep doing this program here. And I was like, I need to start doing what I wanted, and even
I want to get into what I'm studying,
right.
Get out in the world and put this stuff to the test.
Right. And also too, I think it was somewhat confusing to some of the, like some of the places that I was applying to work at, because they were like, wait a minute, you seem super passionate about this. And I was like, well, I'm passionate about multiple things, I'm passionate about, but yeah, I think it was a little confusing because I was like very passionate about that, and like taking, like all the findings and all the experiences and sharing the wealth, because if I didn't necessarily have that when I was like in high school, my guidance counselor was like, usually just like trying to push me into like, just go to college, like you don't need to decide now, and now it's a different game. But like them getting this exposure was amazing. I mean, I still keep in touch with some of these kids, and they talk about it as being a life changer for them. And it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. But I was like, at the same time, like people were reaching out saying like, you need to keep doing this, keep doing this. And I had two partners, Jens and Vanessa, and they were like, maybe we should keep trying to do this. And I was like, I need to get some experience, cause like realistically, I wasn't like a quote unquote footwear designer yet. I was doing internships and co-ops and whatnot, but that led me to my first job. My first job was footwear right out of
was it for
DC Shoes, out in Huntington Beach, California. And I was doing skate shoes, and I was kind of like like a fish out of water, because I didn't grow up in action sports. I didn't snowboard. I didn't surf. I mean, there's nowhere to surf in Pittsburgh. Right. And there might be now. I don't know. Maybe they have like a river or something that has a nice little ripple. But I wasn't exposed to it. And skateboarding was like, I mean, realistically, like the kids that were skateboarding in my neighborhood were like the kids that were also getting into trouble that my parents didn't want me to be around. So it was kind of like, if I hung out with them, or if I wanted to get into skateboarding, that was like going to be my crew. And that they just preferred that.
You're not going down that path.
Yeah. There was a couple of characters. I mean, I'm sure there was plenty out there that, but there was just like those people that you'd see at a park, they were, smoking cigarettes and
right. The trouble was searching them out.
Yeah. And little shiny bottles. So it was like, but yeah, so my sports were like just soccer and basketball and swimming and like just, track and field and whatnot. But and golf, like golf was, that's how we just met. And my brother is probably the only one in my family that really took to it. Mm-hmm. We all were indoctrinated into it, and my dad was pretty much like, it was on every Saturday, Sunday, and we played junior golf and learned the rules, learned the etiquette, decent swing, know the basics, but it wasn't until I took the job when it's funny because when I first saw the job open up at Puma, it was like 5 years ago. And I was like, I remember wanting it 5 years ago, or maybe it was 6 years ago. I forget. But then it reopened, and I knew the designer before me. So I was like, when it reopened again, when he decided to move to Boston and work in the Boston office, the position came open, and I think I applied the first time, and then 4 years later, or 5 years later, I applied again, and it was kind of just a way to pay tribute to my dad. You know, like he probably looking down and being like, damn, you know, he's designing golf shoes. That's pretty cool. And I remember when he dropped me off at SCAD, like to go apply to the school. I mean, he was like, "You sure you want to do this for the next 5?" And I was like, "Yep." He's like, "Can you make a living designing shoes?" And I was like, "I think so. We'll see." But just then there was an article that my mom clipped out of I think it was the New York Times or something, and it was about Tinker, and they showed his house or something, and it was like, I mean, it was laid out. And,
right.
I was like, Dad, I think
he's doing okay.
Yeah, this guy's doing okay. So, but I mean, obviously it's Tinker. I mean, people reference him by his first name.
Yeah, when Shaq, Tinker, Tiger,
right.
MJ.
Yeah, Jordan. I mean, if you're
Jack,
if you use
certain
Prince,
people, Prince,
if you're using just one,
Oprah, the list goes.
Right. So if it ever gets to the point, maybe I need a more. I mean, Tinker's a cool name as well. Like, you know. So, but yeah, I mean, it just has led me. I mean, I've been pretty fortunate ever since. Like, I've had a pretty fortunate life overall. But yeah, I mean, I'm obsessed. Like, I wish I almost wasn't as obsessed as I am. And like talking to someone with like yourself who knows so much about biomechanics and the body and like, you know, different things to improve performance. Like, that's ultimately like what I'm super passionate about. Like, if there was an opportunity to like design a shoe that can actually enhance performance and improve performance, like there's nothing better.
I'm working on a theory right now. After talking, I told you we had the Coach Gill from Godon, and we were talking about how the feet should be, the arches stay supported with the ankle bone being higher. So I just started playing around with putting basically a door stopper under my trail heel, so my right heel, so that my foot doesn't roll inwards and collapse. So it actually works forward. It's like he says, the gyroscope, your foot moves forward and then it goes up, so that there's not as much. If the right knee doesn't kick in towards the ball or cave in too much, now that whole right hip complex, lumbar spine, and right shoulder stay supported, and it rotates, and then you get the right lateral bend. But at least that foundation isn't collapsing. And I when we scheduled to come on, I'm like, God, I gotta run this by Charley, because I don't know how you could do it in a shoe. I mean, you'd build the arch to a certain point, but then when does it become a training aid and not a piece of equipment?
I think like, I mean, no pun intended, but I think tinkering around with things and like doing the research and like exploring the findings and like working with people that are experts in their field, or, like someone in BME, like someone who, can, has force plates, or,
Right.
I went to that facility over in Sea Pines and saw all the equipment.
Tim stuff.
Right.
And all
Yeah.
that.
And it's like, man, this is like, it turns it into quantifiable data, so like.
I might call him up, because he has the stable of players, of very, very high level players that we could take just that simple door stopper from Home Depot that's $5 and say, okay, I mean, we're not going to have these kids hit 100 balls. Okay, we're going to video your swing without it, and then we're going to video your swing with it and see if there's any difference in the trail side and how it's working, and then where the pressure's going.
Right.
And then show it to you and say, okay, here's what we found. There is a big difference. How does that translate into a shoe?
Right. Yeah. And I think like working with like, it's a scientific method. Essentially, you have a theory and you test your theory to see if it produces results, and the results that you're looking for it to produce. I mean, I don't think, if you would have said, I mean, just like, it's probably similar to what Hoka, like that maximum cushioning, midsole, like it's a theory someone had to improve someone's performance, I believe, or
usually anything that's taken off like that usually solves a problem for a lot of people.
Right.
Else it would never get viral like it has, for today's language.
Yeah. And the early adopters, are your best promoters. Like if you have someone who has a great experience with a barefoot running shoe, they talk about it like it changed their life. Like, you're going to give it a shot, like, and they're the greatest advertising too. Cause it's like, hey, here's a real life person. This isn't just an advertisement on TV. This is someone who I trust. This is someone,
Yeah, you get someone like Mark Sessoms to promote your shoe, on Daily Apple and all the triathlons he's doing. Like,
I mean, that's what got me hooked. I mean, like, there's no better endorsement than probably Jordan, or like, let's just say Tom Brady, like Tom Brady wears a certain shoe. That if that shoe works for him, hopefully it'll work for you.
Right.
And if it doesn't work for you, like, maybe there's
at least if you're a 12-year-old kid, you think you're Tom Brady for that season.
Right. And if it doesn't work for you, then you maybe just hit the books, like, just, but,
there's other avenues in life.
But there's, like, I think we have a lot of similarity. I mean, like, we have a lot of things in common, the two of us. And I think, like, it's weird because I'm, obviously from a big family, but I get almost weekly, I get information sent to me, like, similar to what you're saying. Like, I will share you this person's information, and my mom clips out and if there's anything related to footwear, she'll clip it out. It doesn't matter if it's a loafer, a penny loafer, or a stiletto, or whether it's it doesn't matter. Shaquille O'Neal with his brand or whoever, like, she'll send it to me. And I just just recently, I just had a friend who I hadn't seen in like 10 years send me a YouTube video about, like, basically a handful of people, a doctor, biomedical engineer, I think a triathlete, all talking about, footwear and how to come up with it. And they weren't even building a new shoe. So, like, you're
getting input from different modalities, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that, hey, here's what we're seeing on the way the foot works and how the stride and the gait and everything else, and then you got another person interjecting. So it's a collaboration of information.
Yeah, and golf is, like, fascinating because I think, like, it's like one of the. It's such a, like, in regards to biomechanics, like, your feet are doing two different things at two different times, and it's an asymmetrical sport for the most part. It's bilateral, and you almost are thinking, like, I think probably anyone who has designed golf footwear, is like, hey, should we design the left different than the right? But then what about, like, a left-hander? Like, you can't, just be.
Yeah, the accountants are going to get in there and say, okay, how are we going to carry? How do we know how much product to carry? We don't want to get overspent.
Right, the bell curve gets a little screwed up. But realistically, like, there's, even from talking to Tim over in Sea Pines, like, he understands, like, he has some pretty strong point of view, like, as it relates to, like, how what shoes to wear, like, what he wants the heel to toe ratio to be, and because it impacts, it definitely impacts, like, it'll impact, like, your performance, and having worked with athletes before, like, everyone's foot's different, so, like, what may work for you may not work for your twin brother. Like, the anatomy is enough to even just if it's a millimeter or a micron might shift it that much. Hopefully not, but yeah, like, there are people that I've worked with in the past who are, like, trying to like, with the advent of 3D modeling, like, trying to build these, and there's not just 3D model, but like 3D printing, like 3D, like, scanning your own foot.
Right.
And like, building off of your foot, like, your foot becomes the last, and you build a shoe specifically.
Do you think that's where maybe shoe design, or not sales, but companies are going to gravitate towards?
I think the majority of companies are racing toward that for sure. I mean,
because right now there's as you look at shoes, it seems like all the conglomerates have bought up the little ones. Like, Nike now owns Cole Haan, and it seems like even high-end dress shoes, so to speak, are mass-produced to where they're like, okay, they're always mass-produced, but it seems like that they've gotten cheaper and more generic instead of more specialized. So do you think that pendulum's going to swing, as you mentioned, the 3D printing and custom fitting to somebody's foot?
I think, like, I think the customization is huge, like, and not only just, like, the color or the or, like, what you can, like, if you can have your initials embroidered into the heel or whatever, like, like making your own unique, I think that's a big thing. And like specialized, like customized and specialized. Like, I think that's like the key, like, like is there one shoe that can do all the activities? And I think if you built a shoe that could do all the activities, you probably
call it the unicorn.
Yeah, you're exactly. I mean, I think that the 3D printing and 3D, like obviously the technology of 3D modeling is changing the game for sure. And I think, I mean, I don't quote me on this, but I think some of the data that they're going to have access to, especially as it relates to like core performance sports, like, this shoe is going to be better for this type of, foot. This heel to toe ratio is better for golf. This, like, they're going to start being able to collect that data and put that into, into a machine that spits out like a little ticket. You pull that ticket and like, this is what I need. This is what I order. Right. And I'm not sure. I mean, it's just me like, thinking, but yeah, I think we have so much information at our disposal now.
And I think in the last, as it's become mainstream, I would say the last 5 to 10 years of the amount of data that's been captured, and now that the mountain of information, and as science has become such an overused word, I think in the country for certain, in every industry, golf in particular, people are gravitating. I mean, with TrackMan and Flight Scope and pressure plates, but it's like, okay, how do you differentiate between what somebody needs? Like you said, you can have a twin brother, twin sister, and they're going to need something slightly different. Because if you try to apply what the so-called science says, if you don't know how the science differentiates per individual, you could wreak havoc on somebody's physical game, their body, or
Yeah,
I
mean, for sure. I mean,
and even with all these mounts of data, the conclusion, well, everybody's different. Like, yeah, well, we knew that 50 years ago before we had all, or
right.
10 years ago before we had all this data.
Right.
But being able to find out where you silo somebody based off how they measure out for anything that you're doing, whether it's a shoe fit, a shoe design, a golf swing. I think that's where things seem to be. To me, that seems like that's the next thing.
Yeah.
Is how do you differentiate between all this data and how to apply it to someone to make them exponentially better in whatever they're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think if you find that, you'll be building,
crack the code.
Yeah, you'll be building multiple houses in multiple places. But I like even I remember there was one football coach who had his team, like, I guess practicing on the beach and barefoot. At the same time, it's like, his whole goal. And then you think of like some of the surgeries, like, ACL used to be like it was a game over,
right?
You're
out.
And now it's like almost like 6 to 8 months. Then like Achilles, like it used to be unheard of to come back from Achilles injury. And with medicine and science now, KD is crushing it and up for MVP, and he's removed from an Achilles. I mean, Kobe, and also just like having worked with some of these premier athletes, it's just like, some of them, it's just like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's like, they're just gifted beyond belief. There was I'll send you the link to it, but one of my favorite, like, YouTube videos about footwear is like them, like there's a review of like a Jordan or a LeBron or a KD. It was something, but like for them, like those small little tweaks matter, but for like the kid,
when you're playing
at the YMCA,
80 some games a year, you're playing 4 nights a week.
Yeah, I mean, I got exposed to some of that, like at the NBA level too, like working with Lance Stevenson and like seeing like his orthotic and like his feet and like some of the things that he's been through, like watching his gait and like, can I really affect change? Like we built this shoe, but ultimately he has an orthotic that he places in. So it's like build a specified last and to his specifics and his spec and realistically, like he takes the sock liner out and puts his own in, you know, so it's like, and then also different teams have different philosophies on how to, you know, different staff, different medical
Yeah, they're all going to
like,
have different trainers,
right,
and different
and what
therapists.
they want to do, like put a donut in there and whatnot. But no, I mean, I think it's, I mean, I think like as it relates, like there's so many different avenues to go down, and especially like as it relates to sports, like every day just walking, you can do that in pretty much anything. But like when you're like, I don't know, I mean, I think like when you're that big of an athlete, like, you know, someone like Tiger, like Ricky, Gary Woodland, I mean, getting to work with those guys, and Bryson, like Brian, Bryson's like signed. I mean, they're all like very.
Well, Tiger kind of did that with that shoe that he's been wearing since he had his knee surgery.
Yeah,
right?
I think he had like
some input on the design, and I'm sure that somebody out in Oregon, they're checking pressure plates. And
oh yeah. I mean, I got to go down into. I mean, same with that Puma. Like, you know, some of the facilities and some of the you know, like they're working with consultants in the medical field and biomechanics, MIT. You know, you have the opportunity to get the exposure to like the best of the best. You know, even when I was working at you know, smaller companies or startups, like you'll still get emails from people like, you know, that holy smokes, you Google them and they're like, you know, a doctor that has performed surgery on this guy who's, you know, won a gold glove or, you know, whatever it may be. And it's because you're, you know, like it's an opportunity. Like it's amazing. Like the industry has like so many like different facets, like the foams, the plastics, like all, you know, like the leathers.
How do you keep up on all that stuff?
I mean, it's evolving daily. So, I mean, it's hard, but like usually, I mean, like it's so dialed that you have like material designers, you have like, you know, like textile designers, you have color designers, you have.
So you're the lead designer for Puma Golf. So do you have, if you have a meeting, do you have people that are focused on materials like leather, and then someone might be focused, right? Or you come and say, look, this is the concept idea I have for the shoe design, and I want to hear from each of you based off your specialty, how we're going to build this based off what material we're going to use.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, there's tooling engineers there. I mean, it's not just, and even, you know, I think it's, I mean, the amount of people involved is staggering. Like when you, even from a design perspective, like, you know, I would like to think that I like just sketch something on a napkin and all of a sudden you're like, that's
you're at dinner. Here's the next hottest thing in the world.
That's amazing. And
Ricky and Gary are going to be wearing this, and everyone's going to be focusing on it.
Right. Like I wish that it was that easy, but like it goes through like, you know, a process, like anything, like I present ideas, I present concepts. I know, like I do, you know, thumbnail sketches, and, you know, obviously there's a lot of players involved, decision makers, all the way up the ranks, and then even once you get to a place where everyone's satisfied with like just like the general aesthetics, like then you go into the specifics of the foams, the rubbers, the TPUs, like all the componentry.
So it's like picking who you're going to date. Your first, the aesthetics have got to be there first, and then as you start dating, you find out if they're in line kind of with the same views and beliefs that you have.
Right. But it's like for sure. Like I get the parallel is
there has to be the
except
aesthetic
that
attraction.
The shoe might not be able to say like, hey, you're not good enough for me at that point. But yeah, I mean, I think it's crazy because like, you know, sometimes I'll be like, this idea is amazing. Like, you know, they'd be foolish not to go down this route, but it's, you know, they're like, that's not commercial enough, or, you know, like we don't see that, especially in like golf industry, you know, they're, you know, it's pretty I would say pretty conservative in it's changing, it's evolving now, I think, with new generation, but like, you know, it's traditional, you know, like, you know, saddle.
Did you design the shoe that Gary Woodland wore when he won the Open, the red, white, and blue?
I did the like that's what I'm saying, like it's a team, so it's like that
because that thing went, I mean, that sold out.
The graphics,
right?
I came up with the graphics and the color, and that's part of my job as well. Like we're a small team, so it's like we don't have as many resources as like if we're out in Carlsbad, San Diego, California, and
you don't let Ben Showman chime in on anything, do you?
I met Ben a couple times. Like
he and my brother are pretty good friends.
He's from Michigan, right?
Yeah, he went to Ferris State too, and so did I.
So no way.
He stayed back when this is 12 years ago. He when the RBC was here, he would stay at the house sometimes.
No way.
God, that had to be 15 years ago. I think he had just gotten a job. Cobra didn't have the big budget, as you mentioned, small teams, and we're like, hey, you can stay at the house if you want.
Yeah, no, he was super nice. I think I met him in my first week, and obviously our family goes on vacation to Wisconsin, and I've been to northern.
I always
Michigan.
give him shit.
You do?
He was supposed to come on one of the first shows, and then he had to cancel, and I've been on his ass ever since.
Yeah, I mean, I'd welcome more input from anybody, honestly. Like, especially someone like Ben, because he's with those. He's guys. He's out there in the field, and I would welcome any kind of inputs or insights that he has. I just know he's probably super busy doing like his job.
That's why I give him shit. I know he's swamped. Like I tried to get him close to Thanksgiving. I said, look, I know that the tour is basically off. So before you get going again in January, when are you going to come on?
Yeah.
And because now you're on, do you know Bubba Kruger? Bubba's over FootJoy. He was over the amateur division.
I don't know.
Now he's kind of a tour rep for them too. But they were pretty good friends because when Cobra and Titleist were together. And then my brother was on, so it's like, hey, show him when you're going to get outclassed by everybody.
Well, I don't know him super well. I think I met him my first week when I was there, and he seemed like a super nice guy. And he upbeat and positive, and yeah, I mean, he's with those guys all the time, and I had the chance to meet with these guys on a handful of occasions, and just I mean, like Ricky is dialed as it gets.
How about working with Bryson?
Bryson's
with all that they're doing, he and Chris Como are doing with their distance. Have you worked with them on any design as far as support and where they need their pressure for how fast they're going at it?
Yeah, I mean, I think of course I'd always want more, like more exposure to the athletes, because I think their insights and their feedback is just, I mean, it's like, you can't.
It's like talking to the race car driver on how you need to tweak the engine.
Exactly. And so, I mean, and just how hard he's swinging and it's and
then I would be curious or think that it'd be interesting to find out how his shoe design might change from where he was when he was swinging at 118 to where now he's swinging at 100 and whatever it is, 35. Right. I can't keep track.
So there's like lots of different things you can do, is like dial up the the densities of the foam and I mean, like I said, there's so many different factors, and there's so many different teammates on our team that like I said, is like once we even get to a place where we're happy with the design, the actual just aesthetics of it, then you start building it, and then there's limitations, or there's things that prevent this from happening, or like
because technology might not be advanced enough in that.
Just the manufacturing, like you don't have enough tolerance here to have a good solid, like I guess. I mean, the upper won't adhere to the midsole. You need,
last thing you want is to come up with something great, and all you do all this marketing, and it blows out when he's swinging 130 miles an hour at Augusta.
Right, exactly. TV. Like that would be a bad. Like
that's pretty shitty. That's good marketing for the competition.
Yeah, like when Zion's shoe blew out.
I was about to say that.
Right. I mean, it's like you don't want that to happen, but it's also like. Also, you go down the process, you do you go through the sketch, the design process, then you go to the manufacturing processes, and like use this EVA or this PU, this TPU, like all these things, and then they put it through the testing. And then there's like a flex test that they do. There's like tensile strength testing that they do. They put these shoes through water, like waterproofing testing, like
what someone would do in a year, they do it in a couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. So it's like, and they do it to like Puma's standards are incredible. Like they go above and beyond what like industry standards are. So it's like, Yeah, I mean, it's all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is good to go. But then like, oh, well, now this TPU is causing some abrasion here and it's causing the fabric to rip and tear. And so we need to redesign, and it's back and
Constant
forth.
evolution.
And so it's like, whereas like, obviously there's like some speed processes where they want to get a shoe to market quicker. Traditionally speaking, like a lot of the cycle is still like the timeline cycle is still like a pretty significant, and like we just kind of got sent off like 23 or 22, spring 22, 23.
So you're working on shoes a year to two ahead of time.
Oh yeah.
A projected launch.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes we have those rush, like, fire drills, but that's not the norm, especially for the athletes. I mean, like working with Ricky and Bryson and Gary and Lexi. I mean, it's just, we had a meeting with Lexi, and like, it turns out like she had some issues with the shoe, and then they like swapped out a lace, and next thing you know, like
that was it, just a lace.
I mean, a lace was that much of a difference. So
Wow.
like the elasticity in the lace, like impacted.
Yeah, because she has a very unique swing, or at least in through impact, and she's jumping off the ground, and I could see where she would have to have some expandability and not be so tight.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the more exposure you get to them, like I remember being in a meeting one time with like Anquan Bolden, the wide receiver. And it's not golf related, but I mean, like he had specific requests. Like it was almost like, like he wanted like the laces to be shorter. Like, I mean, he was, and I was like, I was an intern, and I was just like in the back, like
the athletes at that level, what they can feel is amazing.
Yeah. Like I think Ricky like said he would be able to tell the difference of a millimeter.
I had a friend, he had a club fitting repair, and he had his own trailer independent on the PGA Tour, and he would winter down in Innisbrook. But he told me one time the guys, I don't know if it was the Golf Pride guys or whoever it was, but someone who was putting on Nick Faldo's grips thought they'd just try something. That they put one, like a 1/4 inch width piece of tape on about, I don't know, if it's a clock, and Nick wanted them at, say, 6 o'clock as a reminder on the bottom of the shaft. Let's say they put it just an extra piece of tape at 4:30. So he might have had 3 layers build up, and I'm just using this to try to develop a picture. Maybe 3 pieces, and they put one strip piece on the side. And he came back from the hitting session. They said, Nick, what do you think of the new grips? He said, well, I think they're pretty good, except whoever put that extra piece of tape under there really, didn't do it a good service.
Right.
They're like, holy shit, you can feel that.
Right. No, I mean, it was incredible. And like when Ricky Fowler said that, I was like, wow. And he's not not the first, but it was kind of mind blowing. I was like, wow, like this is how acutely aware of all the specific. I mean, these are, I mean, obviously these are next level. I mean, even hanging out with Gary Woodland for the day at Detroit Country Club, like you want to remove any distraction, like if there's something that's bothering him about the footwear, like you don't want him to be thinking about that.
You don't want him wearing Band-Aids on his heel because he's got a blister.
But I mean, he was like, he was really interesting for me too, is because he had some basketball background, but he was, his, like, again, these they're next level. I mean, it's just like, another thing too is like the amount of time they're spending in these shoes too. Even
walking
gloves,
7 miles a day.
I mean, just
swinging
like,
them.
I mean, it needs to be dialed to their specifics, and like I would, so bring it back to Ben. I mean, he's with them all the time, so I'm sure he, probably has way more information as to what they are saying about whether it's their gloves or their clubs or their shoes or their socks. I mean, all of it is, is all important, and like, yeah, I mean, I would love, I mean, that kind of exposure. I mean, it's just like if you're talking about hydrotherapy, like it's great to talk to your buddies that are testing it, but I mean, like, just imagine the amount of information you would gain by spending a day with Wim Hof,
right?
So
yeah, it shortens that. I think and you know better than I, this is your industry, but my theory on the creativity is if you can gather, the more information you can gather, and then if you're in it, it's easier for you to decipher and work in and out of each thing that you're gathering, and then you start to develop the instinct, so to speak, to say, okay, if this does this and this thing does this and this contributes here, what if I molded it this way? And then something's guiding you because all the things you're seeing and subconsciously interpreting, like, well, I have this idea. If I mold it this way, it might do this. And then you do it. It's like, well, it didn't quite come out. Like you're like doing a recipe. If I add a little bit more of this and a little bit more of this and it wasn't quite right, but the next time you do it, you tweak it, and eventually you're going to nail it. And then, you've come up with something that nobody else has.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of correlation between cooking and recipe and like in the final product of cooking, baking, or whatever, and footwear too, because there's like, it is a recipe. Like there are things that like components and pieces and parts, you can dial them up, you can dial them down, you can make them stiffer, you can make them, like, and custom tailored. And I mean, just the advancements alone, like I think back during, Civil War era, I think shoes they weren't
leather.
They weren't right or left specific. I don't think.
Right. It's just a boot, like a
right. So
straight,
it's like the advancements are incredible, and it's like even with this information that you're talking about, like the more information you have, like, I can imagine like when Tinker is working with Jordan, he's not just working with Jordan. He's probably working with like foot surgeon. He's probably getting as many more information about like foams, materials, like how much stretches in this. The amount of, and same with, like Usain Bolt from Puma, like you're building spikes for the fastest man in the world.
Have you gotten to work with him at all?
No, but I know people who do, or who have. And like, I know, people that are designing for Neymar. And like, as far as like the industrial design background is like, it's like taking art to part. So you're working with like also some amazing people, like on the factory side, you're working with people from like MIT or, different consultants that are focusing on biomechanics. And then the athletes, of course, have their way in. And it's just, it's, I'd say like the amount of information that are at your disposal, plus you do your own research, you're like looking into like, hey, like this is like sustainability is a big thing in the industry right now. And so like you find different materials that, like not only from anything from like the packaging all the way down to just the, like the insock, it's can be a cork or whatever. But yeah, there's probably, in terms of innovation, like there's I always say like, we're not like curing cancer or landing planes on aircraft carriers, but it's intense. And like, I always try to stay on top of it as much as I can. The more relevant I am, the better off I'll be, or else they'll put me out to pasture.
Yeah. You gotta have, you're providing some value.
Right.
I'd always looked at, anything that's going to be really great. And I don't think shoes are any different, as you have the creativity side of it, and then you have the functionality of it. And I always use Apple as an example when I explain that to somebody, right? So from a company standpoint, you had Wozniak, who was the technical genius behind the scenes, and you had Jobs, that was the visionary. And then you had the money, the Markelas, who were funding them, and hey, here's what we're going to do business wise and everything else. But even if you get into their products, they had the full scope, where they had the aesthetics of a beautiful piece of, I don't want to say machinery and have somebody from Apple just an asshole. But you had beautiful, the silver and the rounded curves and everything else. But you also had the interior that was completely and functionally that nothing else at that time had. So can you talk a little bit about the creativity, or you kind of did, but of the design, and then for the aesthetics, and then the design of the functionality?
Yeah. I think, you're talking about Apple. That's, like in the ranks of design, that's
still the hallmark.
Johnny Ives was an industrial designer, and he and Steve Jobs collaborated together on several projects, and he's up there with Tinker as well. It doesn't get much bigger, than Johnny Ives, and what he, also too, like there's influences over the year. Like if you study the history of industrial design, there's these fathers of industrial design, like Raymond Loewy and I mean, furniture designers, like, and I mean, you can read about them till, I mean, you're blue in the face, but Dieter Rams also, like in terms of design, like they have the Bauhaus movements, and this, where I went to school was Bauhaus, and it was like all of these masters of design, and they giving their like their top 10, like what is good design, and they influence, like, I mean, everyone takes bits and pieces, they learn from these masters, and Dieter Rams, I think, was super influential in creating the design aesthetic for Apple. And it was like, it's kind of breaking it down to its bit, like a utilitarian perspective, like, what do you have to have, what is needed, how to make it beautiful, pleasing, like remove any details that are unnecessary. And I think that's what Apple was brilliant at.
Simple.
It's simple. It's clean.
Simple.
It's functional. Like you said, I mean, they take into consideration all, like user experience. I mean, the amount that goes into it is in industrial design, even, like measure a man, like how, like the measure of human beings, obviously, was a book that was, I think it's, don't quote me on this, but Dreyfus, but it all goes into it, and it's all like, it's years and years of learnings, like, and so like you get to like Apple being the end product. Before there was like Dieter Rams, and like before him there was like, and you probably go all the way back until like, I would think like in terms of like fashion, like, I was talking to Chris the other day about like just like the design of military uniforms back in the day, like the difference in like some of the like the studies and looking into that. But as far as like aesthetics go, like in footwear design, there's so many different, people have different philosophies on how to approach it. And like for me, like enhancing performance was like what I guess functionality is like the main thing. Like I want it to fit well. I want it to be comfort. I want it to perform to the sport. Like, like if my golf spikes don't, or the shoes that I design don't have good traction, like in rough or sand or
yeah, it's got to cover a lot of different terrain.
If they don't measure up in terms of performance, that's not a good look. And then finally, like the style of it, like the aesthetics of it is like usually kind of like that not the, I won't say the last, but I mean, it's like, if it doesn't fit, no one's going to buy it. If it's not comfortable, they're not going to wear it. If it doesn't perform, they're probably only going to give it a couple whirls. Yeah, they'll give it a couple goes, but ultimately, like the style, like, I mean, that's super subjective. Like whether they, like some people, like I've been in meetings where some people love the Jordan 4. And other people are like, no, I'm all about the Jordan 11, like, and I'm like, yeah, we all have different tastes. So it's like, what, and that's what I talk to some of the athletes about is like, what shoes, are they keen on, or like, what's their style? Like, do they prefer like to have a lot of bells and whistles, or do they, want to have it toned down, or, so it's, it's like, I guess 31 flavors and then some, in terms of like designing, and at the same time, like it is a business, so we have to design for the masses as well. Like what will do well in the market.
I say that's got to be the hardest, where you're trying to design something functional and aesthetically pleasing, but aesthetically simple.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is, I mean, like of some of the different products that I've designed, in terms of even when I was, first starting out, like understanding the consumer is half the battle. Because at the end of the day, if they don't like what you put out there,
could be the best thing in the world. If they don't like it, it's
right. I mean, if it doesn't, I mean, like there's so many, also on that side, there's like, you have your team, maybe they don't like what you put out. Then you have the buyer at the stores, maybe they don't like it. And then you have the consumer, which is the end. And they might have liked the ones that got rejected, and they don't like the one that you put out. So it's like, who knows? So
It's crazy because you never know what's gonna. I've written. I don't know how many articles I've written for magazines, and I sit there and you anguish over. Well, first you have only so many words you can put in, and then you've got to get the topic across in a way that's very simple for them to apply if they're going to the driving range. But half the articles I wrote that I thought were awesome, it's the best article I've written. The response was,
yeah, and some of your worst.
Average Joe, yeah, okay, it made it work. I tried it. Some of the ones that I just slapped together I thought were horrendous.
Yeah.
People were writing me, oh, I tried this. This was great. It worked. My game's changed. It's never been this, it's never been this good. I'm like, all I do is throw a couple things together that to me was the simplest in the world.
Yeah.
But I was talking to one guest on the show, Randy Soma. He ran a Fortune 50 company. And he said, when you get to a certain level, you're an expert at it. He said, you're so far beyond that what most of the people who you're trying to get across to, that you have to dumb it down to such a level that a lot of people can't do it. And I think one of the best pieces of advice I got was, well, pretend that you're relating it to an 8-year-old, right? You've got it, the level that you're at when you're an expert in something and trying to put it into terms and words and pictures and visuals that someone that's going to use it can understand that is not in that field. It is, yeah, you've got to, for the level you're at to the level it's got to get to, it's like speaking to somebody that's 8 years old.
Yeah, that's similar. Some of the people that I've worked with, like, especially when I was in New York, my goal was to be like the dumbest person in the room so that I could like learn, because I love learning, but like also at the same time, like I would also say, like, explain to me like I'm a 4-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old, and if you can make it that simple for them for me to understand via like explaining it to a 10-year-old, like that's what, because the majority of the people, like, we obsess over like the bottom of an outsole, like if this lug is too big or this lug's too small or if this cleat's placed right, or
the stuff that you're dialing in on, no one can even see,
right?
And the stuff that you see a million times a day, that's going to be huge to somebody.
Right.
So you're not paying attention maybe to what they think is important.
Yeah, and so we're so close to it. So it's like, even as like you said, you're writing articles, like you think it's your greatest piece of work you've ever put out, but it's a little bit too much because they can't, like, you over explained it to the point where it became too difficult.
Yeah, and they couldn't comprehend it.
Right. And that can be the same in footwear too. It's like you can design something that people just aren't ready for. Like they just, like, I would say, like, when Jordans were coming out, my dad wasn't ready for that. I mean, I was.
Especially when they were having the lizard print on the sides.
Yeah, my dad was like, no way. Like, no, you wearing a white shoe with navy. I was
like the Nike Air.
Right.
It's all white with a swoop.
I was like, nah. But that's the thing too. It's like you could design, like, what, like, you get a think tank together of some of the brightest people on the planet, design a shoe that will enhance your performance, your golf game, and make you take you from like an 8 to a scratch. Like, this shoe will guarantee you to take 8 strokes off your game. And some people just might not be ready for it. Even if you are explaining to their blue in the face like how it will make their golf game better, they just still might not. I remember when who was Freddie Couples wore that, wore no socks in the Echo. Like, that was like, I think at the Masters.
But
he was wearing no socks, and he was like, he kind of had floods a little bit so you could see it. And I remember, like, I was like, wow, this is the first time I've heard like a golf broadcast talking about footwear as much as, and that's all it was. Like, he just wasn't wearing socks. And it was, and like,
he just threw
and it was like a
thing away and
regular cupsole, like different. It looked like a sneaker as opposed to a golf shoe with like a saddle.
And everything's moved that way.
Yeah, and so it's like, but like it was like one of those industry changing events that, like, people, the masses were like, not so sure. But
when someone as cool as Freddie wears it, everyone's jumping on it.
Right. So I mean, like I said, it's. I mean, there's so much more for me to learn in this, like that, and that's part of the reason why I love this, like, this game, and like, especially with all this information about enhancing performance. Like, I think we like, if Jordan had all this science and like innovation at his disposal, like, even health science. I mean, that might have been just like
Ridiculous.
yeah, because I mean, just like all of these things that are like diet, like it's just evolved to a place where you're just, trying to get to like 4% body fat. And it's just like, now you have all these, I watched that one documentary, you probably seen it too, Icarus.
Yes, that was awesome.
I mean, and like even Lance, and even like the design, like the desire to get the below the sub 2 hour marathon, and like all of the innovation, like the money that is put into that, and all the science and technology. And,
well, the fact that in that Icarus, when the KGB figured out how to take the tops off the non-breakable bottles of the test that no one's supposed to be able to break,
right.
and they swapped them out. It's like, how did they do that?
They like split and showed
yes.
like kind of like a wireframe on how they did. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. And I remember someone telling me, I forget who I was talking to, but a friend of mine who was a triathlete, and he was saying that like the advancements of covering up substances is like 10 years ahead of actually the testing of
I can imagine.
So I was like, whoa. So it gets into these like zones, but I'm just watching, like, even Tom Brady, it's incredible. At his age, performing at his level, like, and you just see the TB12 and like what he's doing, like to get in shape and take care of his body, and like, post treatments and pre-treatments. And it's
someone told me the other day, LeBron's spending $2 million a year on recovery. All this recovery stuff.
But
if he's making $50 million a year, what's okay? I'd spend $2 to make $50.
It's a good investment, I would say. Yeah,
he's probably making more, but put it in some sort of perspective.
Yeah, it's insane. You see some of these contracts and how lucrative they are. It's just I remember, I think I was before I went back to school, I was like bartending, trying to figure it out and whatnot, and I remember I was in Chicago, and Kirk Heinrich came into the bar, and like he was just, I think it was preseason or something like, but he just came in for like a Miller. I know exactly what he had to drink, so I'll remember it for the rest of my life. But I also asked him like what he was like, what his pregame ritual was, and he told me his pregame ritual, and I was like, dang, I'm surprised, because I thought it would be like way more like nutritional and science backed, but some of them, will eat,
McDonald's.
Yeah, KFC, whatever, but some are super dialed, but I think like, as you see, like with Brady and Tiger and the amount of effort, even like with Ricky and, Bryson, what Bryson's doing, and what Gary and Ricky and Alexi and all the athletes that are wearing Puma gear, like swinging, it's another level, like they showed a picture, I think, on Instagram the other day, like, like there was a picture of, I think like it might've been Ricky and Gary, but they were eating bananas, and then they like had like a side shot, and it was like Arnold Palmer and like maybe smoking cigarettes.
Yeah. Ben Hogan, I think.
Yeah, it might've been Ben. And so they're like, which is your crew? And I'm like, well, I'm more on the banana side, but like it's just it's evolved to the point where it's like there's so much money in it now that like people are taking extremes, and then and on the footwear side, from the golf perspective, like I think like the footwear is evolving as well, like not only just stylistically but also just performance wise.
His quality control gotten tighter, because I remember, especially for a company like Puma that was European based, that because I used to wear it quite a bit. I'd have in one shoe I'd have a 14, another shoe I'd have a 13, and
yeah,
is that just is there? And I notice a difference between like the European-based companies and like a Nike, the U.S.-based company. And then a friend of mine was working at a Nike store for a while, and he said, well, he showed me the serial number. He said, well, if it ends in whatever it was, he said they're made in, I think at the time might have been made in Mexico, and he says it's a different cut. And then if you get this serial number, it's going to be made in the Taiwan plant. So he said that this one runs like a half a size bigger than it says. This one runs true to size. Is that still in the shoe industry, or is
I think like, I mean, I think as far as quality control, they put a ton of money into trying to get it to like fit within a range of, you know, a couple of millimeters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everyone's goal is to be true to size. But at the same time, you have someone who, you know, like on a measuring device, they might be a 10.5, but they prefer their shoes to fit snug. So they actually wear, I mean, that's the case with me. Like, I probably should be wearing a 10.5, but I wear a size 9. Like, might have like something to do with like playing soccer, and I always wanted to have, and basketball, I wanted to have a tight fitting shoe. So I just grew accustomed, and I don't have any, like, there's no space in the front of my shoe. Like, my toe is right up against the edge.
Mm-hmm.
But most people, you know, especially like running too, like runners want more space because their feet expand.
They slide and expand.
Yeah. But I think their goal is, I mean, I would think like their goal is, if they want a size 9, they want it to be exact. I mean, they put a lot of money into it, and if it's a size 9, they want it to fit within a certain spectrum. Like, of course, the last measurements dictate a lot of that, if not, well, but also the materials, you know, and then as you're lasting in the footwear, like, you know, there's, you know, give or take a little bit. There's some, you know, a lot of these are built by hand, so it's just like, you know, human error sometimes if you just last it off a little bit,
right?
But more often than not, most
those are the ones that go to the outlet,
or hopefully they don't make it through. Like, if quality control is like, they'll check it to make sure that like it has all the proper measurements. Even like I said, like, they measure length of shoelace, like from the end of the IRO after it's laced before it goes in the box. But and depending on how rigorous their quality control is, like I mean, their goal is to have it every 9 fit like a 9 and every 10 fit like a 10. And then it comes down to like user experience and like what works for you. And then it's, as far as like which factories, like whether it's Mexico, Brazil, you know, Indonesia, Vietnam, China, wherever they're made, even the United States, like it's subject to change based on, like, you know, I guess even whoever's working the line at that time.
When you were studying design, in particular of shoes, how much of it evolved around, let's say, the anatomy of the foot, the different type of arches, the difference between the ball of the foot and the toe, and the length of toe, length of foot, width, the different ratios, and then how that related maybe to somebody's gait pattern?
I would say, you know, I guess it's interesting because I was talking to a friend of mine the other night, and you know, he was in industrial design school with me at the University of Cincinnati, and we were talking about the different courses that we took while we were there, and there was one that was like you build furniture, and instead of taking the furniture design course, like, I decided to do like a biomedical engineering cross collaborative study. So I took a BME course to understand the foot and like understand the anatomy and not go through like actual.
Because you wanted to get into shoes, so
like it was like I was
sense.
focused, but I mean, I kind of regret not doing the chair, because like now, I mean, I was just saying the other day to my brother, I was like, man, I would kind of wish I would have been looked into architecture as well. You know, like, I'm fascinated about design just as much as like, and I didn't think, realistically, like, one of the coolest internships I had in my time when I was at the University of Cincinnati was working at Wrigley Chewing Gum in Chicago, and it was packaging. And it was pretty fascinating, the amount of like design and hard work and dedication and passion that people have about packaging or cut. I mean, I worked with an engineer that helped develop the Starbucks cup, and it's just like, wow, like all of this. Like, I mean, you go to Chicago, go to the Wrigley Innovation Center, right out, like, it's right off of North Avenue. I mean,
I think my cousin's husband, he's a nutritionist doctor, and he worked for Wrigley for some time.
Wow. I mean, it's just like, I remember like some of these guys, I mean, I remember I was like, I mean, my goal of being the dumbest kid in the room was 100%.
You got it. You nailed it.
I mean, some of the people that I worked with there were just super next level intelligent, just, you know, like common sense, like, and so I think being at the University of Cincinnati, like it exposed me to design on a different level. Like I wanted to be in footwear, but it exposed me to design, like where there were kids that were, and I say kids because like I went back to school when I was, later on in life, and the majority of the students were right out of high school, and they're whipping around these programs like with their eyes closed, and I like barely knew how to turn on a computer. And so like I had to catch up and like try my best to catch up, but some of these students were like next level. And as far as it was in regards to like 3D programs and different software, like it's like what they were, they were getting exposure to that at such a young age. And that was like kind of the impetus for the program that I did. It's like, if you expose people to stuff like this early on, like even golf, like my dad exposed me to it, and I was lucky to be exposed. And if I would have picked up golf, like I've seen people pick up golf later on in life, and it's usually not pretty. Like they don't have the basics, foundation.
No, if you put that foundation in early on,
yeah.
The old adage is like riding a bike.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't never say golf is like riding a bike for me, because Chris says I played military golf, but like, but yeah, like if you're exposed to it, like I said, like some of the students that I was in school with, they were exposed to some of these software design programs like in 6th grade. And I think I got back I lived down in Central America for a year and a half, and I think I came back and I literally like didn't know how to like turn on an Apple computer. I was like, where's the power button? So it was like my learning curve was steep, and I think I'm getting off target, but as it relate back to your question, like, how much is the anatomy and how much is the biomechanics? Like, I think I push myself to learn more of that. And I still need to learn.
Because that would get to behind the inner workings, the functionality of what the shoe design.
Right. And I think like, I think like realistically, like I have a goal of like eventually starting my own brand at some point, like depending, brand of shoes. Or just, doing my own thing at some point, and focusing on the biomechanics and the science and the anatomy and like actually doing, like, even if I was talking to my mom, like she's getting up there and she talks about there's not great footwear for the graying of America, and like, can you design a better shoe for someone my
seniors
age? Yeah, seniors. My mom is saying that all the time. And maybe there's a niche market there for footwear, but
especially you have baby boomers. I mean, they're
right.
all the fifth. What are they now? 60+.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even for my, I mean, like it's just when I think about all my friends, like half of my text messages that I get these days are like people asking me what kind of shoes they should wear. When they're dealing with like plantar fasciitis, or like they have like a bunion, or whatever it may be, they're like asking me, and I'm like, man, test it out, try it out. Like I don't have the magic wand, but like I think I think that those are the things that I think about a lot, like in terms of like how to build a shoe to enhance performance, and in whether it's just walking to and from work, like what will enhance your experience. And I think that's like, I like to get the negative and positive feedback when I do my shoes. So like, it's sometimes better to hear like what's wrong with your shoes as opposed to what's right.
Where did your drive come to continue? Because the creative process can get, how do you not get lost in it? And how do you maintain the balance of not going down a rabbit hole to where you lose your way, but still
that's hard.
Have drive,
like like
inspiration,
right? Like the fine balance. I mean, like that's the thing. Like the motivation. Like where is it? I think for me, it's. A lot of it's internal, but like it can be external. When you get a good team, like if you're a part of a good team, like what can be accomplished with many, it's kind of like, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go with a crew. That's not actually the quote. I mean, I forget what the quote is, but it's like, if you want to go fast,
close enough.
Something. Look it up. But that shit's real as far as I'm concerned. Like if you like a team, like can supply that motivation, can supply like the passion, can, you know, like you're having a down day where you're feeling like I don't want to do shit today. You know, you're with someone who's like, man, come on, like we're on the crux of like, you know, like,
we're almost there.
Yeah, like let's go. You know, like and it's like that. You know, like it takes a village type of thing, and but ultimately, like I'm just like it's like a catch-22, I think, almost for me, because it's like I almost wish I wasn't obsessed like as I am. Like I'm super passionate about footwear, like, and I have been ever since I was like in 4th grade, 3rd grade, and that's kind of cliche because like most designers will say that, but like I like the time period at which I grew up. I know I mean now it's huge too, like, you know, all the athletes that you're exposed to, but like at that time, it went from like 5 miles per hour to like 100 miles per hour. And I was like,
Mach 2.
Yeah. And I was like, and I think that everyone in that time period was exposed to it. But I, for some reason, was just like, it was like my own, like, I mean, it was, footwear became like an obsession for me at young. And to the point where my folks were really not psyched. They were not happy that I chose to be obsessed, and I was drawing shoes and like coloring them. I remember my brother's friend asked me to design it was a Nike Dunk, and I'm like, you pick the colors, I'll do it. And he wanted pink and black, and I called it the Air Yazoo. His name was Mark Yazinski, and awesome golfer too, real good golfer, and I did it for him, and he was, you know, psyched, and he's just like, your little brother's kind of a psycho, drawing shoes all the time. And I was like, but I also like got away from it too, you know, like I got into sports, and sports was like my North Star. So like, but I mean, again, shoes was part of the uniform. So it was like, even when I was, you know, going to school, it was like, I had to have a pretty decent pair of kicks, or else like,
something the world wasn't right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was, and it was an obsession, but like, even to today, like I look at what people are wearing on their feet. Like that's the first thing I look at. Like I you know, like I just always say like, hey, don't, you know, when I'm with my close friends, like, don't think I'm like eyeing up somebody. I'm just looking at their shoes, you know, because, you know, like some people might get taken aback if I like up and down them. I'm usually just looking at their shoes.
No, I just design shoes. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I'm super passionate about it, and I like to share the wealth too. Like I talk to young kids coming up the ranks. Like, you know, it's a super identifiable product. Like every kid, you know, my nephews, my nieces.
How much do shoes play a role in culture?
I mean, there's courses at university levels talking about the influence of footwear in our culture. Like how, I mean, like you go down the ranks. I mean, like James Dean had an issue, you know, like, I mean, talk about Run DMC, you know, they had their shoe, you know, like you, and like, and it's still to this day, like, you know, there's uniform. I mean, there's people that like swear by a certain shoe. I mean, like, look at what's happening with hip hop culture. Look at what's happening even in like, I mean, I went and saw a band in New York City in Madison Square Garden on New Year's Eve. I think it was New Year's Eve, but it was all J, and they were all wearing Nike, Nike shirt. I mean, I think they might be even, you know, given the product by Nike. I'm not positive, but like, I mean, just look at, you know, even Puma. I mean, Jay-Z. I mean, it's as much a part of culture as any other. I mean, probably more than any. When I was doing the Tread project, actually, my partner Jens, he was like, why don't we just make it about like less about, because he was worried about like they're spending too much money on these shoes. They need to be, you know, focusing on like saving their money. You know, I was like, he's like, we should make it about designing toothbrushes. And I was like, it won't have the same impact.
No, shoes like a representation of somebody.
Right. So it's like, it's intertwined with culture, like on almost every level. I mean, the golf culture as well. Like, you know, I mean, like nowadays, like, you know what they're wearing. You know what every athlete's wearing on their foot. I mean, I can go down the ranks of almost every golfer and know what brand they are. And young kids are the same. They know. They know what Ricky is wearing.
Yeah, whatever Ricky's been paid, Cobra Puma's made it back quite a few times over.
Well, I mean, the influence he has on even adults. Like I remember I was walking in I forget what airport it was. It was either LaGuardia or actually no, I think it was. I think it was across the river, New Jersey, Newark. I was in Newark Airport, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw Saquon Barkley.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of adults that were rushing over to get his autograph was, I mean, I'm talking like 50s, 60s, rushing over to get a picture or get an autograph. They're culture phenomenon. And then I check out his shoes, and he's got he's lined up. He's set up, and it's just like, of course he's wearing those, a pair of off-whites or whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's courses that talk about the influence of what the sneaker culture is about. And it's not just sneakers. I mean, we're talking about high-end shoes too, like Balenciagas and Gucci and it's
Ferragamo were the big ones for me and my brother.
Yeah, and it's endless. I mean, like the amount of footwear. Like I do a presentation on like the history, the culture, and then it go into design and the building and the manufacturing and the history is just like, I mean, some of these companies have been around for a really long time. I mean, Nike's 1972 or 3 and Puma been around a lot longer than that. And, Under Armour's new to the scene, but I mean, I think it was like, I'm not sure what year they launched footwear, but I mean, the lineage, we're talking like Keds, we're talking like Converse, yeah. We're talking, like some of these, these footwear companies have been around. I mean, even some of the high-end fashion houses, like we're talking, a long time ago, like pre World War II. So, like I said, and then there's like these startups. There's tons, Allbirds, I worked for a couple startups, and it's just like, people think like there's not enough space, to do another
like
startup.
An app. It's like the app world.
Yeah,
right?
it's like
a new one popping up every day. Yeah,
there's just a little bit like thinking back, like there's just a little bit more involved in building shoes than there is, building apparel. So what's involved with your hat is a little bit less involved, because you don't need to necessarily open up tooling or anything like that.
Right.
But yeah, it's an insane industry, and it's and like I said, even being in New York City, I was I was out in California and LA, and then I was I've lived in a lot of different places, and just in New York City, you're getting Timberland, Jordans, Nikes, Adidas, you name it, Puma. I remember when I first started, applying for the job, this is probably a looking glass self, but I just started seeing Pumas everywhere, so it's and which ones, the majority that you see are X style, and same with all the other brands, I knew when Under Armour had a new release one time, and it was the World Basketball Festival. You saw it was Brandon Jennings' shoe, and all the kids were wearing Brandon Jennings' shoe. Same with Steph Curry. They're wearing Steph's. When he did that little, I think it was Fruity Pebble one.
Mm-hmm.
The kids were wearing it. I would walk by the parks. It's the same thing, but New York was it was insane, and the amount of people in that culture, the sneaker boutique shops that you go to, Flight Club and whatnot. It's another level, and that is translating to golf. I think that
it's coming. With the younger kids.
Oh yeah. I think you even see some of these, even some of the color ups. What Gary, there was never I didn't get more. I think I looked down at my phone during the Open when Gary was crushing it.
Right.
I looked at my phone, all of a sudden I had 187 texts.
Whew.
And I was like, what is, and I didn't, but I was I don't think I had my phone. I forget what happened, but I can't. And I was like, oh shoot, something, I thought something bad had happened.
Mm-hmm.
9/11 type thing. And then they're like, it was all about Gary Woodland and the footwear, and that red, white, and blue. And it was like, and then I started watching it, and they were like playing like Bruce Springsteen and stuff, like Born in the USA. And I was like, this is wild. And I had never, I mean, even when, NBA is kind of high up in the sneaker culture world, but like, and even when we did stuff for Lance or whatever, like it never,
not like that.
No U.S. Open. I mean, it is, and we've been same with Bryson. Like when he was popping off too. Like my phone started. I was like, here we go again. But it was like, it was crazy. It was crazy, and there was a lot of blogs like saying things about it too. So, and it just, I mean, it was like time and place too. Like you talk about culture, like what was taking place in the United States at the time.
Right.
It was pretty heated, like both politically and culturally, like with some of the different movements that were taking place socially. So it was like, kind of like that timing is everything type of deal. But yeah, man, it's like I said, I mean, like I can talk to you till I'm blue in the face about footwear all day long.
Hey, hang on one second.
Yeah.
All right, we're back from piss break. You start going on long podcasts, you need the bathroom break.
Yeah.
We talked about where you see shoe design going, but is there anything you're working on now that you can give us a kind of a peek on without letting the cat out of the bag or getting in trouble with the brass?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on product for. I just finished Ricky Fowler's update.
Mm-hmm.
Did a high top kind of like offshoot from that he's currently wearing, and I believe today. And then like I'm working on some spikeless shoes updates.
Is that for golf or just golf shoes that would be spikeless for daily use?
It's I mean for both. I mean, obviously most of the pros want spikes.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them are starting to wear like some spikeless. So the goal is like we're messing with TPUs and different compounds to hopefully see if they would entertain the idea of a spikeless. But we're doing some pretty innovative stuff. I would say like some of the product that's coming down the pipeline is going to be, I mean, we're doing a lot of like research with compounds, foam compounds, whether it be EVA or PU or whatever the compound may be, or a percentage of TPE or whatever TPU. Like that's like the kind of like the materials are like starting to be front and center in the game. But yeah, like for Bryson, I mean, like his swing speed and like the amount of pressure that he's putting onto his products, like mm-hmm. whether it's the club or the shoes, like we're exploring that. Gary's the same. I mean, like when he hits, I mean, like,
yeah, he's not a short hitter by any
means.
He's putting like some serious force in there.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to talk with all these guys, like and like get their insights and like what they're looking for, and we're just trying to push the envelope, like focus most on innovation. As far as the designs go, like there's like that fine balance between like what the pros want and what's commercial and what will sell. So you play that. It's like a dance, Mm-hmm. But I would say like currently right now, we're starting to look into, SS23, spring, summer 23. And, like whether it's, sorry about that. Whether it's, I don't even know. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think we're just trying to push. Like we're just trying to find that sweet spot where it's both everyday use and high performance.
A hybrid.
Yeah, model. Like a hybrid, and whether it's like a lot of people are liking slip-ons, booty construction, where lace becomes less important, or the disc becomes less important. You still get that snug fit, but you can untie the laces a little bit, not choke them out as much. But it's like I said, like golf, like it's the build of the shoes is I mean, it's very involved. Like I think that the the performance and the materials and just the overall innovation that's taking place in this space is incredible. Like some of the most sophisticated builds that I've done in my career, I would say. And since they're playing on natural surfaces, weather, inclement weather, and waterproof, it's way more involved. And like the team that we work with is like, focusing on so many different aspects of it. What will this do when we're walking on the pavement? What will this do when we're walking on grass? How does it perform in sand? How does it perform on the greens? How does it perform in the rough? And like it's exciting. Like that's the part that like you have the real opportunity to enhance performance. So it's
is creativity in that sense more problem solving?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's like,
or that's a large part of the equation.
Yeah. I think like sometimes like when you're working with creatives, like their minds work differently, and my mind might work differently than the business side of the like a sales rep or whoever. But like, and the process is like key for me. Is like I have a process, and like it might be different than the designer that was there before me, or probably be different than the person after me. But like for me, like you start with like the essentials of like a good shape, a good silhouette, a good a starting point. Like what the silhouette looks like. What's going to be the direction of the upper, the top, the upper part of the
that
shoe.
holds your foot in place.
Right. Yeah. Like, are we going to use laces? Are we going to use a disc? Or are we going to use an alternate, lacing system? And then like, do we want this to be a EVA midsole, PU midsole? Like, go from the, and then get the fit right. Make sure it's comfortable, because like you pull it out of a box if it doesn't fit, like I said earlier, and then you comfort. Like, is it comfortable to wear this for 4 hours? Because golf isn't like a 40-minute sport or a
in today's world
sport.
that they want it now. It's like people don't want to play 5 rounds to break in their shoes.
Right.
They want it comfortable right out of the box.
Right. So out of the box is crucial, and then like I said, style, like being, like those 4, fit, comfort, performance, and style. Like they're all pieces of that puzzle. And if there's pieces missing, like whether it's the style, the aesthetic, or the performance, like it's not, it probably won't translate well. So it can be intense at times and stressful at times, and even more so now a little bit because of the pandemic, because we're doing less, we're not traveling overseas, so a lot of our communication is back and forth, across several time zones. So yeah, I mean, it like when I was a kid, like I just thought it showed up on the shelf at Foot Locker, or Dick's Sporting Goods, and I was like, wow, like this is amazing. Like I love this, love this cleat, or I love this basketball shoe. But I didn't know what went into it, and now that I know what goes into it and how many people are involved and how many hands it touches and everything, it's like I wish it was easy as just me drawing something and coming up with this crazy idea that, whether it be like, suspension in the heel or whatever, or like a lockdown mechanism, an alternate lacing system. Like, and I was like, I guess the next Tinker Hatfield.
Yeah. Like, how many decades did they work on that shoe that was in Back to the Future?
Oh yeah. That self-lacing. Yeah. I mean, it's like, and then you see some of it, like even in the world of like social media and in like, like all the different, platforms like LinkedIn and stuff, you see some of the people that are working on products, like what their emphasis on. They have like a degree in mechanical engineering with a like a master's in biomechanics. Like it starts getting to be at a place where it's like you're in a room with a lot of like heavy hitters. And like I said, like one of the places, like I would say Wrigley was like, I was meeting with a guy who helped develop the Pringle chip.
Wow.
And I'm like,
pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm like, where, like, but he was like the way his mind worked, and then I was working with another kid who, he was not a kid, but he was building a system where like if there was any imperfection, it would create a gate that would not allow the piece of gum to travel through the conveyor belt. And I'm like, and that's like when you see some of these heavy machineries, like whether it's a drill or, you know, like someone's actually designing, building it, you know, engineering all the specs and like the industrial design portion of it is like making it beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to know like how it works and what's on the inside and, you know, read blueprints and get down to like the, you know,
need to be like the Tony Stark of the shoe industry.
Well, Tony's, yeah, like that's the thing. I mean, industrial designers are like, I mean, that was some of the crazy things that I was getting exposed to in college is like seeing some of these programs and seeing like, you know, like with the capabilities and, you know, like it would crash if you couldn't do an undercut or like manufacturer capabilities were not possible. So like the learning curve, like I said earlier, it was steep and I'm still like, I still learn new things every day. Like I was just talking with a tooling engineer the other day and we're talking about a carbon fiber plate and like the thickness and the responsiveness and all of that goes into the, you know, like incorporating a carbon fiber plate. And then you get to a place where you're like, oh, that's awesome. Let's do that. And they're like, oh yeah, by the way, it's going to be like, you know, X amount of dollars. You're like, we might not hit that price, you know?
Can't be there.
So, but I mean, it's a fascinating industry. And like, even when I go back to like high schools and colleges to share my experience or my path, like, I mean, I consider myself lucky and to be in it. Like and I'm passionate about it, and hopefully that you know translates to them, and it might be something that they're interested in. And if not, like I remember one of the students that I worked with, like loved it, but wanted to design cars. That was, you know, and so that's fine too. You know, like design, it doesn't, and you could go into marketing, you can go into business, like just realizing that like these shoes don't just show up on a shelf. There's a lot goes into it. And there's a lot of jobs to be had too, you know? So anyway, I think I answered your question.
Yeah. What do you tell a kid out there who's listening? If a kid listens to this podcast, that the best advice you can give them, that they have a passion for design or in shoes or whatever capacity.
Yeah. I mean,
they're a golfer and hey, I want to design the next, whatever it is, shoe that for the golf world. What's the best piece of advice you could give them?
I guess, I mean, I think hard work, you know, and passion are two intangibles that, you know, you can't learn though. I mean, necessarily you can learn it, but I mean, like but I would say if I had some advice, I mean, I think passion and hard work for sure you can learn, I guess. I mean, and passion, I guess it can increase, but I guess I would just say is like fall in love with learning and just the process. And like, I mean, really like what you don't know is just as powerful as what you do. And I would just say like fall in love with learning, because when I went to the University of Cincinnati, I wanted to be a footwear designer, but like I was exposed to so much more. And I could see, like I said just the other day, I was like, I kind of wish I would have studied architecture, and now I kind of think it would be cool to be able to design a home. Different stage of my life, I guess, but I would say like just I don't know, like fall in love with not knowing just as much as knowing, you know. So I guess that would be my advice too.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Looking back, anything you would have done different or done over again?
Yeah, I don't think we have enough time to go through some of the mistakes and errors I've made along the way, but I mean, I don't necessarily like to look back and have like, I don't know, play that game, because it probably is I mean, you go down that rabbit hole and sometimes people don't come out.
Right.
But I would say like for me, I think like early on in my career, maybe my ambition might have been a little bit too great. Like I think I maybe should have just like appreciated where I was at that time and place, but I was like always looking for what's next.
Next thing.
Yeah. And I think like in the pursuit of in the pursuit of greatness, like I sometimes overlooked like the journey that I was on, and can't go back and rewind time, but like I think I just I still have that tendency. Like I want to be great, and that desire sometimes creates frustration and creates
it's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
You know, the drive to push yourself to do something that in your eyes at a minimum is great work.
Right.
And then where and how do you back off? Because it's like if you, especially on the creative side, if you don't feel it that you're pushing, then it's you don't think that you are.
Right.
But as you get older, you learn that you don't have to push 110% all the time. You can blow an engine.
Yeah, no, I think my ambition, like even like, you know, when I was junior designer and stuff, like it may have created some problems with, you know, people that were up the pecking order, you know, perhaps. But at the same time, it's just like, I don't know. I mean, I think we talked about it a little earlier about like, you know, it's not necessarily radical, but like you want to leave your mark and you want to, you know, do something worthwhile, you know, and like be a part of something bigger. And whether you're like, you know, like I guess I'd rather be on a national championship or a state championship team on a bench than start for a team that doesn't make the playoffs, you know? So, that's a sport analogy, but like, I mean, it's really like, I mean, I think like leaving your mark is like, I think what a lot of people struggle with, like in their own day to day, is like, you want to leave your mark and you want to, you know, be, you know, looked up to, you want to be important, you want to be appreciated, you want to have value, and you want people to listen when you talk or whatever it may be. But I think, yeah, I mean, I definitely have like regrets for sure. Like
I don't think there's anybody that doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like
maybe you didn't take enough chances if you don't.
Right. And I think I was lost for a while too. Like I think I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, but at the same time, like it all led me to where I am today, and I'm pretty stoked about, you know, breathing still. So
it's a good place to be.
Yeah. And like, but I would say that like this has opened up a ton of doors, like even to be able to, you know, sitting at the table with you, like, and it's obvious that you have passions and you have, you know, a lot of history and a lot of experience, and I probably wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't have, you know, like have something at least a little bit to offer.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, when I did the podcast, this stuff, I mean, I bought some of this equipment and sat there for a year and a half. I mean, part of it was maybe early on was procrastination. It wasn't procrastination. It was fear that I don't know what the hell I'm getting into. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And then the second part after a few months was like, okay, I don't know how to edit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to find an editor.
Right.
And just by chance, you know, a friend of mine said, well, I used to do that for a radio station. I'll help you out.
Yeah.
So then it's like, okay, now I don't have the impediments have been removed. Now I got to jump in the deep end.
Yeah, I was just talking with my sister. Like sometimes, like the most difficult step is the first one. You know, to actually put yourself out. And you said fear. Like I think a lot of times fear is the main driver for a lot of people not to chase the dreams. You know, but I mean, honestly, like when I was at design school, I would say probably for the first year and a half, like there wasn't a day that went by that I didn't think about quitting and giving up, you know, and just being like, this isn't for me, because it was overwhelming. I mean, I was in a room full of people that knew how to do things that I've never seen before. So I would say, yeah, like it was an experience. And I guess the whole thing, the journey has been rewarding, but at the same time, there are frustrations, there's trials, there's tribulations.
Yeah, at least it's frustrating. I mean, that's the main thing. At least it's frustration thing that you get out of bed in the morning. Yeah, I can't wait to get into work.
Right. Yeah. And I think my dad said to me one time, he said, if you're not going up the staircase 2 steps at a time, then you're not at the right place. And I was like, you know, he also said, I think he's like, if we all wanted to be center field if everybody could be center field for the Yankees, right, we'd be. But I mean, he said a lot of those cliches, but I think there's something to it, and I definitely I don't know. I mean, I think it's important to love what you do, or at least fake it until you get to the place where you ultimately want to be. Mm-hmm. And there's no doubt in my mind that I love footwear, but like anything else, sometimes it
wears on you.
But I'm still when I meet someone, I look down at their shoes still. You know, like I see what they're wearing, and for better or for worse, I might judge them for what they're wearing. But at the end of the day, like it's a pretty dynamic, you know, industry, and it touches most people. Like there's not many people that aren't affected by it.
Or walking around barefoot all day long.
Right.
Let's do some emergency 9 questions.
Okay.
Here as the end.
One word answer.
However you want to. Some people, I mean, emergency 9 is supposed to be.
I'll keep it short.
Quick, and so some people have gone like half hour extra. So however it pans out.
I'll try to be short because I can get long winded, and that's probably another thing I need to work on.
I tried to phrase a question so they're easy.
Okay.
All right. So this one I give to about everybody. If you were on the Ryder Cup and they have that walk up song now, you know you're going to be the first one to tee off in the Ryder Cup. What's your walk up song?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I would say I love Thunder Road.
Okay. Here's a little off the wall one. If you could play one video game the rest of your life, what would it be?
Probably NHL.
All right, cool. Favorite line from Caddyshack?
I think it's like, you do drugs, Johnny? Or Danny?
Danny.
Yeah, Danny. I don't know. I mean, there's so many classic.
So many. Right? That's why I put that in there.
I mean, I thought that was. I mean, there's. Ronnie Dangerfield. Like, it looks good on you though. Like, there was a kid that I hung out with in New York, and I think I told him that he reminded me of Ronnie Dangerfield, and he didn't even know who he was. And I was like, I mean, it was a generational gap, right? But I mean. But there's so many good lines from that movie. But
it's full of them.
Yeah,
that's why that's become a staple in the rapid fire.
Danny.
So as a surfer, and this is not golf related, but I thought it was an interesting
I don't
question.
call my. I'm nowhere.
Well, you're a hell of a lot farther than I am. I couldn't even get up on a board. Best surfing destination on the planet. And I say it only because I watched the Laird Hamilton Take Every Wave documentary. That was really cool. But
I think the coolest place that I've actually paddled out. I mean, I told you earlier, I still call it drowning because I'm lucky if I catch. I mean, I learned when I was working for Quicksilver and DC Shoes, and I went out there all the time, but I'm drowning. But I would say the coolest place that I ever paddled out was either, it was a cool day. It was like Trestles in California. Like, it was right next to the Lowers Pro. And there were professional surfers in the water, and I was they were at, I think, upper. It was called uppers, and I was at middles or something like that. And I caught one of my best waves of my life. But also like Saint Teresa Malpais in Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. That was pretty, and plus the water's warm. And also, like, I would say, like, Rockaway. Like, I loved paddling out in Rockaway in New York. That was cool, just because it was like East Coast and a little bit more gritty.
Right.
But again, like, it wouldn't take you long to get to where I am in surfing, trust me, because there was kids that I surfed with that were like this kid Terry Diamond and this kid Ted Livingston that I surfed with out in California that were like, yeah, next level.
Do you have the goal to like get to North Shore or Wahoo, or was it I don't know the place at Hamilton surfed that wave in the Pacific, Teamu or
Teapu?
Teapu, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, like, I think after having hand surgery, I'm like, it's not big in my wheelhouse anymore. But I think I'm good with like just like slow rollers, and I for me, honestly, like, this is weird, but I like just being out in the water. I mean, water is like, I'll spend hours in the water. Like, I just love being in the water.
Cool.
Don't really like sharks, but
that's another thing kept me from surfing. Growing up in the Jaws era.
Well, I remember I worked on a shrimp boat down in South Carolina, and the guy was like, if the water was clear, no one would go in the water. And I was like, what? So, I mean, but I love being in the water, and surfing was cool. Like, the guys that I went surfing with, we had a good time and laugh and being out there. And I was more in it. I'd like when they were in the lineup and there's good surfers, I stayed away because I had no business being out there. Like,
Didn't want to get in someone's way.
Yeah, get in their way. And like in Huntington, it was a little bit more rougher. Like, and they were good. So I swam away. Like I didn't need to battle, especially like at my age. Like I was like some of these, they were like 15-year-olds just like, doing aerials and stuff. I was like, basically like,
you got to watch that documentary. Is it Take Every Wave?
I've never seen it.
Laird Hamilton.
Yeah.
I think it's on Amazon.
Yeah. Well,
that's it. I mean, it talks about him from a kid where, he got started into surfing and he basically introduced his mom to the guy who became his adopted dad. He was a big surfer and the whole thing, how he never cared about being judged or competitions. He just wanted to surf and do his thing. And
yeah, like I had the fortune to meet some like action sports dudes and
they're a different breed. They're like airline pilot, not airline pilot, but fighter pilots.
Yeah,
it's just a different cut.
It was like like Rob Dyrdek, and like Danny Way, Laird Hamilton, and like they talk about Laird Hamilton and being next level, like just not afraid of a thing.
Right, just anything.
Like things are afraid of it.
Like he figures out what he wants to, or he sees something he wants to do, and he figures out a way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and like I got to meet Travis Rice. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but when I was working at DC, I also got to meet Travis Rice one weekend. Like it was during the snowboard. It was at SIA in Denver, and this Travis Rice, he was like next level, but he didn't have like fear. Like
you can't not to do
thing in his
like
brain that sent off like flight messages. He was like that. Have you seen that the climbing documentary about spacing his name? I forget, but
Alex
Hangel,
freestyle,
free solo,
yeah, that was awesome.
I mean, that's just.
I saw him the first time I saw him was in the other climbing video that was I've watched it 4 times because every time someone comes to town, a friend or someone I know, I'm like, you got to watch it. Valley Uprising on Yosemite and El Cap and all the how it just got started from the 50s until the free solo stuff. Now this is amazing.
I mean,
every group taking it to a whole new level.
Right, like Travis Rice was like just hearing him talk, like I could tell he didn't possess that part of the brain that registered fear. And that's amazing.
It's like a superpower.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Laird is probably he's high on that food chain as well.
Couple more. Last book that you read.
Oh man, The Great Bridge, about the building of the Brooklyn Bridge, and it's David McCullough, and probably one of my favorite books I've ever read. And I kind of, when I went to design school, like I and afterward, I was so focused on footwear that I kind of like everything else took a back seat. But I started reading, I guess, when the pandemic hit, and The Great Bridge that was the most recent book that I read, and it's amazing. And then what they were able to, back when they were, and there was a bridge by Washington Worldly's father in Cincinnati, Ohio, too. So like it was like the mock-up for the Brooklyn Bridge. So it's the same, it's the same builder family, Washington and John Roebling, but like what transpired and what took place to accomplish the Brooklyn Bridge and all the sacrifice, not only for the people that were building it, but all like the city. It was, there was like a lot of correlation. Like there was an election taking place, and it was like they were deeming it the most important election for the perseverance of democracy of all time. Like what you hear today. But I would just say like that book, honestly, like if there's one book I could recommend, well, there's a bunch of books that I could recommend, but that book, most recent book if you haven't read it, you should.
Yeah, I'll check that out
for sure.
Let's see. Dream Foursome. Pick anybody throughout the history of mankind to play golf with. You're going to play tomorrow. You can pick anybody and play with anybody you want to.
Probably my brother, my dad, and Tiger. Or I don't know. Our cachet, like, or Jack, or Ben Hogan. Actually, you know what? I would probably go Ben Hogan, my dad, and my brother, or Jimmy Demerit. My dad liked Jimmy Demerit. So like probably a force in that.
So you would have the health food and the bananas, and all the other guys would have the cigarettes. Like the picture.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking like my dad probably would prefer playing with Ben Hogan as opposed to me and my brother. Well, actually, he probably enjoys playing with brother, but I would be the sideshow probably because I would be hitting it all over the place. But yeah, I would say my dad, my brother, and or my brothers. Like that would be
family group.
Yeah, family group,
cool.
And then family like my 4 brothers and my dad, and then maybe throw in Ben and then Tiger. Tiger would be good. I just watched that documentary and that one.
I got to watch that. I haven't seen it yet.
And Ricky and Gary, like Gary was super cool to hang out with. I got to eat dinner with him, and he was super cool. And Claude Harmon was another guy that I got to meet who's, I mean, talk about having like knowledge and taste, and I mean I consider him a tastemaker, but that's a tough question. So sorry I wasn't so direct, but
here's an easy one for you.
Okay.
Your favorite shoe of all time. Doesn't even have to be a golf shoe.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, like I said, when my brother on that after his confirmation party, when he opened up that Jordan 3, that was
the genesis of your
pretty much. That
passion.
Was like, I mean, the Jordan 1, 2, and 3, those were at like ages when I was like, it's when it bubbled. It just, I mean, the Jordan 1, the Jordan 2, the Converse weapon, like with Larry Bird, and so like, yeah, that's when things started getting weird. But I just remember that night, like and I remember like I had needed to wear like 3 socks to fit into it, and like I don't think it was back in the day where like you didn't wear it anywhere other than just on the court.
Right. You didn't want to.
Yeah.
You soil
and
it.
You would clean it every like toothbrush and soap and cleaning the bottoms after every game, making sure it was squeaky clean. Yeah, that is more nostalgic forever. Because I mean, there's shoes like one of my favorite. I mean, I could give you like the trash talk that Steve Nash wore. Like I love Steve Nash, and what he wore was unreal. Like KD4s are sick. I mean the suede, the Clyde Puma. Playing soccer, I wore a Puma King all the time. Is what I talked about when I was interviewing at Puma. Is like I wore that in high school playing soccer.
You know what one of my favorites is, because I got started in basketball when I was about 19, what was I, about 80, 79, 80, 81. And the old Converse, the suede ones, that like Larry Bird used to wear.
Oh, yeah.
And, because obviously Dr. J was the man back then.
Oh, yeah.
And Converse was the thing, but the suede ones that Bird had, I thought those were just the coolest things in the world.
Yeah, I just watched a video about like Nolan Richardson when he was talking about his first episode of like
he heard about him and then he saw the picture.
Yeah, he was like, damn. But I was like, the shoes for me, it's like time and place too, because like it's like, I mean, even KD2s, those are, I mean, Kobe's are like that line is, I mean, performance wise, like for me being a point, running 1 or 2 in high school, and like if those shoes were around when I was that's what I would wear was Kobe for sure, like that. And
I hope. Well, I wanted to, you'll hopefully you'll be the one that breaks that makes that shoe in the golf world that just. Hopefully you do a to the golf world what Tinker did to the basketball world. That'd be pretty cool. Then I can say, hey, Charlie's on the show. Go check it out.
Yeah.
Go check out episode 40. What is it, 41 or 42?
Or maybe we work together with your concept of,
sure,
and we collaborate and we do a shoe that changes the game, because realistically that's like, I mean it's nice to work for big brands, and but it's like you're on the shoulders of giants, and you're lucky to have that badge number. But like for me, it'd be cool to like do a startup and like, I mean, obviously I don't want to have it be my name, but like, you build everything, together with a small group of people,
yep.
Like snipers.
Like Shoe Dog.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what, like, to me, that was like the Shoe Dog.
That was the coolest thing.
Yeah, because they were just trying to figure it out, and like they made mistakes, and you're gonna make mistakes, and you learn from them, and then you might make the same mistake again, and again, like that was what was it humanized it for me. Like that book, like
the challenges of capital was very interesting to me because there was no venture capital back then,
right?
And how they and the passion and the willingness to put everything that they had and just roll it over again.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna make all this. We're gonna roll it over again.
Yeah, and the part when he was like not responding to the guy in California, like he was like so. I mean, it was like a ragtag group of people, and they all didn't have the same strength, and they all didn't have the same weaknesses, but they just were committed to it. And I think like that commitment and that that drive and that ambition is like what will separate you. And I think like. They had some luck along the way, and I think you need that too, and timing. Like obviously, like I talk about Pittsburgh a lot because that's where I'm from, but like there's a lot of history with footwear in Pittsburgh, and I think like I subconsciously like was swept up in that, and I didn't even realize it. But Pittsburgh had like but when Jordan, I mean, that story is like well chronicled, but like he could have been at Adidas, or he could have been.
He wanted to go to Converse, didn't he?
And same thing.
His dad talked him into going.
I mean, there's so many different. I'm sure they're like probably the Last Dance. I think he dressed a little bit, but I think there's all kinds of behind the scenes and like the true stories like come out like later down the road. Yeah, and that's the same thing. Like you hear stories about all these athletes like that, like they come to fruition. But I would say like it would be cool to like. The story of Phil Knight and the story of Kevin Plank and like the founders, Rudolph Dassler and Adi Dassler, and like it's not like this you hit the ground and the sky, like
right.
You go through stumbles.
You're not going to be as Apple and you go from jobs being worth what a couple $100 to $1 million to 10 to 100 million in 3 years.
Right. I mean, they probably had like. Prior leading up to it, they had a lot of hardships along the way. So it's like, I guess you got to take your lumps, and it'd be cool. But yeah, maybe we collaborate and do do that shoe.
The last one, as far as the Tiger and Jack debate, greatest of all time.
I didn't have I wasn't around when Jack was doing it, but I mean, he has the numbers. Watching Tiger was like electric. I mean, even it made me. It was always on, but when Tiger was crushing it, it made it more exciting. I mean, it was like a phenomenon. And but I'm like people say Ben Hogan's the best of all time.
Yes, I think so, of all the questions, I think you're the 42nd episode. It's about split, but there's been a couple that said Hogan. Someone might have said Gary Nicklaus based off his size and what he was able to accomplish. Yeah. Like a four-cylinder supercharged engine versus V8s, to win that much. Yeah. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, so I asked the question.
I think, and like, I mean, like even our cachet of athletes, like, is it just to watch them and have gotten up close. Like, I would love to play with all of them and get to know them better and see them play, like Ricky, Gary, Woodland, Lexi. I mean, Ernie Els is in there. I mean, in our, but yeah, I mean, Tiger, I think is like just watching that documentary, like there's probably so much more to it, like they scratch the surface, but I would love to hear the stories. And same with Jack and Arnold, like Arnold Palmer, like he's doing the collaboration.
That's why his name's the King.
Yeah. I mean, like watching, like, doing some of the Arnold Palmer specific special makeups, like, I mean, learning about him. And then my dad's like, he was from Latrobe, which is right up the road from Pittsburgh. And he had he's about as iconic as it gets. I mean, you see that
still
umbrella, like who it's for, and like have a drink,
I mean, until
you have a drink named after you.
I think until he passed, the Golf Digest had that yearly list of who makes the most money in golf, top 50 or 100 or whatever it was. Arnold was always like third or fourth. Yeah. I mean, he had been retired for 40-some years. Yeah. He's still third as far as income with golfers in the game.
And he's a pilot. I mean, he was like, he was I think he's in the Coast Guard or.
Yes, I believe so.
And then, just like, I guess like too, like I think about like when, Chris is kind of a conduit for me to learn more about the game and like hearing about even Payne Stewart, like what Payne Stewart could have been and like what he was and what he could have been. I mean, he had a silhouette that was unmistakable, know, and Chris said that he was one of the coolest guys on the tour. And like that's cool to hear too, is like who are the nice people, who are the people that treat like the attendants and the bag drop guys well. And that goes a long way with me too, because I don't know, we put our pants on the same way. You put, like you wake up in the morning and sometimes it's hard to get out of bed and sometimes it's not. So yeah, I'd say like that's a super tough question, but I think if I was like held to it, I'd probably say, I mean, just because it's more relevant to I've seen it, like I saw it live. Like seeing it live goes a long way. So Tiger,
it's your era.
But there, I mean, it would be cool to see the old school too, like Arnold and them, Ben, and my dad really liked Jimmy Demerit's style. So it'd be cool to kind of hear some of the story. I mean, I love history, so like history, and I. Like that's what was my focus when I got my Bachelor of Arts, and like I think history like teaches a lot of good lessons. Sometimes we don't listen to them, but we should. But yeah, that's. I mean, you can't go wrong with it. Well, do you keep a tally of who?
I don't on the paper, but it's right around 50-50.
So what number am I?
You're 41 or 42.
Okay.
And like I said, it largely depends on the era that somebody grew up in, probably because that's who they watched.
Right.
Older people tend to pick the Nicklases, younger tend to pick the Tiger.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's a few others that said Hogan or Player.
Right.
But yeah, and I get asked all the time, and I've said this over on the podcast. I think Tiger played the best golf. I think Nicklaus has had the best career based off his majors, but also how many times he came in second. I think it's like 36 second places or something like that.
Wow.
Like some crazy number.
Yeah,
but again, and I always cap it off with asterisk. Tiger's book's not ended yet.
Right.
He's not done.
No, that for sure. And plus, like I think it's like you have to take into consideration like the advancements in technology and innovation too, and like what was. Like if they had the resources that...
Well, there is that, but I think that's detrimental to Tiger, and that has brought more people into the foray of who he had to compete with. You could pick anybody on a tour any given week now that's going to win. Back when Jack was playing, the fields were definitely not as deep.
Right, and there wasn't as much money in it. So
right.
And then there weren't. Yeah,
it's hard to compare eras. It's almost impossible.
Yeah, I mean they do it all the time, and they're doing it now with like Jordan, LeBron, blah blah blah. But numbers like are important, and they're definitely important to me. So 42, 41, I want to know which one
I'll definitely let you know. Me know. I got to look
because they're significant. I mean, like it would be cool to say like I was the 41st, the 42nd. But what
do you have coming up? You lecturing anywhere? People can follow you. Your tread deal, is that YouTube or anything? People, and I'll have that in the link.
It's I don't have a website up and running anymore, but like you can find it on Vimeo. It's called Tread Project.
I'll put a link in the summary.
Yeah, I'll send that to you. And then so I still go to high schools. I went around high schools in the New York City area, quite a few of them actually. I went to a lot of like at-risk youth high schools, and I have some friends that are teachers, and then I teach a high school seminar at the University of Cincinnati, DAP. I've done some portfolio reviews at different universities, working like in the works, like hopefully having a core class curriculum of footwear design at the University of Cincinnati, or possibly Carnegie Mellon. And then I'm on social media, but like I'm trying to, like during this pandemic, man, I'm just like trying to diffuse a little bit of the
craziness.
Just like the amount of time I spend on like the devices. 'Cause it's like, I was thinking about it this morning. I was like, I'm no longer going to put the phone near my nightstand because I want to get out of bed. Like I don't want to look at my phone and just like waste time. But yeah, I mean, I'm on social media. Find me on like Google, LinkedIn.
I'll put all the hashtags of yours in there, and people
it.
Can follow you and like you and see what stuff you're developing, creating. And
and I should post more. Like everybody has told me, like I need to improve on like self promotion. But it's kind of like, I don't know, like sometimes it's cool to be behind the scenes, like, I
look at, you look at some of this stuff nowadays, TikTok, and I just sit there and look at some of the, especially the girls that they do like look at me, and
Yeah.
almost a narcissistic without even being it. At least that's my view. But
Yeah, no.
I think for someone like you who's creating something that people want to see and use, I think if you view it more as sharing what you're doing so that they can check it out. And
yeah, my old I'll give a plug to my old roommate. My old roommate, I was just like looking through some design sites, and James Robinson, like he's like we were roommates, friends, good friends, still keep in touch, and he's designing cars, which is like a 3-year design cycle, but he is like on the forefront of using the Oculus in designing in 3D with like a program called Gravity Sketch, and like he is the guy. Like people are going to watch him, and he draws like shoes and cars like in like with the. I mean, it's like I said, some of these.
Yeah, you got to share some stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like next level. What you're talking about, like with drones earlier too. It's like there's people that are like that have gone down these rabbit holes. It's like what they're creating, and I'm like, I sometimes feel like I'm still trying to like start a fire. So,
well, show more of your stuff. A lot of people like to see the shoes and the fires. So.
Will do, definitely, and I think there's some cool shoes coming down the pipe with Puma for sure. Like we've worked really hard as a team to make it happen, and I think you'll appreciate them. They still pay homage to the tradition of the game, and but also push on the innovation, and hopefully it's appreciated, and hopefully performs for the athletes and for Ricky and company.
Cool. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
We blew through 3 hours plus the pre-show, so to speak, bullshitting in between. So it's been cool.
No, this is
really
awesome.
Appreciate you coming on.
No, this is great, man. And if any time, man, I would love to come back. Maybe on the 75. I'll be 75 or whatever. But no, this is awesome. And thanks for the hat. And let's keep in touch for sure. Right. And we'll share info for sure.
All right, we're out.
All right, thanks.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's PARADIGM. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353.